For the record, it is Tuesday, June 9th. It's a couple minutes after 3. We'll start with roll call attendance, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Cavanagh.
Here.
Councilmember Mylum.
Here.
Councilmember Byrd.
Here.
Councilmember Roundtree.
Here.
Councilmember Borton.
Here.
Councilmember Zaremba.
Here.
Mayor DeVeard.
Here. Item number 2 is the Pledge of Allegiance. If you will all rise and join us in the pledge to our flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item number 3 is adoption of the agenda.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Roundtree.
on item 4E, the resolution number is 15-1069, and on item 4G, the resolution number is 15-1070. On item 8F, it's been requested to amend the agenda, legal and fire department discussion and approval of an interagency joint powers agreement. And with those additions, Madam Mayor, I move that we approve the agenda.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda as amended. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All ayes, motion carried. Item 4 is our consent agenda.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Roundtree.
with the previously approved addition of the resolution numbers, I move that we approve the consent agenda, authorize the clerk to attest and the mayor to sign.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Madam Clerk, will you call roll?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Cavanagh.
Aye.
Councilmember Mylum.
Aye.
Councilmember Byrd.
Aye.
Councilmember Roundtree.
Aye.
Councilmember Borton.
Aye.
Councilmember Zaremba.
Aye.
All ayes, motion carried. I'm going to move down to the podium. And Robert, is there any packets that I have to? Okay. Melissa, I'll ask if you'll come and join me up here. Melissa Stevens is one of our youth scholarship recipients, and I've had the privilege of working with Melissa over this last year. She was on our executive committee and was just absolutely thrilled to see her blossom over this last year. Melissa is graduating from Compass Honors High School. She's been a leader on the Youth Advisory Council for the last 2 years, serving as our secretary. And I've already challenged our incoming secretary to try and do as good as Melissa did. She was awesome. She was timely. The responsibility that she showed during this last 2 years, has been phenomenal. I can't say enough about that. Melissa took her role as secretary very serious, and as I mentioned, went above and beyond. She's constantly challenging herself and fellow MIAC members to be more efficient and effective in their leadership. She held us all accountable for better follow-up, and I had also the privilege of interacting with her when the team went to Austin with us, and saw the leadership that they took during that time. They did stand out over and above all the other youth. I am biased, but it was proven. So in addition to her time on MIAC, Melissa served as a volunteer for the Idaho Food Bank. She was a fundraiser director for the Ronald McDonald House, huddle leader for Fellowship of Christian Athletes, and president and secretary for the National Honor Society. Melissa will begin college this fall at Point Loma Loma Nazarene University and study secondary English education. So I will give you one of our City of Meridian pins. Robert will give you whatever I was supposed to. And just thank you so much for your participation on our Youth Council. You've made a difference in our community, and I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I would just like to say I've really enjoyed being a part of the city and being in the Youth Advisory Council. I know that had to go through approval to being creation, so thank you for everyone who supports it. It really makes a difference in all the teens' lives, and I've loved being a part.
It's been hard saying goodbye to our seniors this year. They were a dynamic group, and as you saw at our last council meeting, we have an incoming group that are mostly seniors, so next year will be all the same. Our next recipient, if you'll come forward, Maggie, is Maggie Moulton. Maggie is graduating from Rocky Mountain High School and has a weighted GPA of 4.15. Wow. Maggie takes every opportunity to serve others, whether it's at church, school, in the community, or in the sports area. She has served as president for her church youth group, participated in Rake Up Meridian and Linder Road cleanup, collected over 10,000 pairs of shoes for children in Africa, and collected hundreds of cans of food for the Meridian Food Bank, as well as other numerous volunteer activities. Maggie's greatest passion and desire to serve others through the practice of physical therapy. She will be attending Idaho State University, go Bengals, and this fall to pursue her undergraduate and eventually her graduate in physical therapy. So congratulations, Maggie. We give you the City of Meridian pin. The check will be sent directly to your university. But congratulations and thank you for your contributions for our community.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I would just like to say thank you so much for this scholarship and for the opportunity to continue to pursue my education. I had so much fun serving this year, and I just want to say a little bit about one of my favorite things, which was a Read With Me program where I got to work with kids at elementary schools, and I just love serving them and seeing their happy faces. So I've had a great time serving, so thank you.
And so I would again state to Melissa and Maggie, as you go out and spread your wings and get your education, start your careers, we hope that you start those careers or return back to our community where you've already had a profound difference in setting your seed, letting it grow, but we do want you to come back and start your careers here and raise your families. So we wish you great success, and we hope to see you again soon. Thank you. You know, I wish that everyone who had a criticism for our new generation or our next generation could read these applications and meet the people that these students that are so involved in our community. I think that would put their fears and complaints aside, because we have an outstanding group of teens in our community, and it makes me very proud to be able to offer these scholarships that are really funded by the sponsors of the state of the city, and give them that recognition from the community, using those community dollars to say, you have community backing. So, anyway, enough said. We'll move on. Our next item is 5C, which is Valley Regional Transit Annual Report, and I'll welcome Kelly to the podium.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I always love the opportunity to get to follow those inspiring young people, and I think that happens every time I come to do this report. I think I've come before when you've had young heroes who have called 911, and I always feel like I wish I could be that inspiring when I'm speaking to you, but it's actually warms my heart to know how much Meridian values your youth and all the great things that your youth accomplish while they're engaging in civic opportunities. And I have a presentation, I think, on the system somewhere. We'll see if I can get the machine to work this time for my... I might have to, there we go. Always push the power button first. Okay, let's see. Yep, that works. Just again, every time I come, I kind of remind you about who Valley Regional Transit is, and as a regional public transportation authority, we are accountable to local governments. That's why I come back every year, and as often as you will allow me to let you know what our activities are and how we're out there working on your citizens' behalf. We are responsible for public transportation, for coordinating regional services, and supporting private providers. So, as a reminder, Valley Regional Transit doesn't directly operate very many services, but we our effort is to try to bring different services together and coordinate them. Our priorities for the last several years have been to secure stable funding and expand the public's understanding of benefits of regional public transportation system. Our goals are demonstrating stewardship, building community partnership, and improving organizational capacity. This particular presentation, I'm not so much giving a report about the last year. We met with the board to kind of ask what sort of information do elected officials want to know about our activities, and this year the board suggested we spend a little time kind of talking about how we're funded, going back to the basics. So some of this may be a repeat, and I apologize for that, but hopefully you'll benefit from the information. Just to remind you, we are divided, our service area is divided into two areas for our federal funding, and they're federal funding formula areas. The red lines represent the large urban area, which is which is Boise, Meridian, Eagle, Garden City. The purple boundaries represent the small urban area, which is Napa, Caldwell, and Middleton. Our large urban funding, we get what we call Section 5307. It's about $3.4 million annually. That can go towards capital infrastructure, equipment, preventative maintenance, planning, operations, and mobility management. Some of those funds are what are matching the project that we're doing for the Saturday route for Meridian. Section 5339 is really a capital only, capital equipment and preventative maintenance. We get about $350,000 a year for that. And Section 5310, which is serving older adults and persons with disabilities services, we get about $350,000 in that area. The small urban area, which Meridian also benefits from these funds, these are the funds that support the inter-county services that travel through Meridian. And those, as you can see, are smaller dollar amounts. The one message is that we leverage every federal dollar that we can with the local match in our system, and we're highly reliant on federal funds. So every federal dollar requires a local match in 50% for operations, and this is in the generally, 80% for capital planning and preventative maintenance. In the large urban area, we prioritize all of our federal funds for capital and maintenance. The city of Boise right now overmatches the federal dollars by a few million. And then we're able to match the capital, and as I said, by an 80-20 match. In the small urban area, it's about 40% of the system is funded with local dollars and 60% is funded with federal dollars. So we're very reliant on the federal program to be able to provide the services that we do. Our local contributions come from a per capita assessment, and I have at the end of the slide Meridian's amounts for these. A per capita assessment, which is the same, it's I think around 46 cents per every resident of the incorporated areas, and then the county does the unincorporated areas, so they're unduplicated population. Our special members, which don't have their own population, are the highway districts, Boise State, Meridian Development Corporation, Capital City Development Corporation, and College of Western Idaho. They pay a flat rate every year for their participation on the board. We support our regional administration and operations with those funds. The operations contributions are fund the service operations, and those are allocated among lots of jurisdictions. So, for example, the services that serve Meridian are also funded by Nampa and Ada County and Canyon County. So, you know, I guess the phrase, it really takes a village for every one of these services. If one funding partner decides not to fund the service, it causes the whole thing to kind of fall apart. So we've been really fortunate. In the last several years, we've had really stable funding. We haven't had much increase in funding, but at least real stable funding. A look at our current services. In Ada County, we have our 15 fixed bus routes. We do have one Garden City bus route, and our access, which doesn't swerve persons with disabilities, it serves persons with disabilities in Boise and Garden City. I usually let the people I'm presenting to find my typos, but that one I decided to point out myself. In Canyon County and Meridian, we have our 4 local routes in Napa and Caldwell, and then we have the 5 inter-county routes. The one of those inter-county routes is funded by Boise State and CWI, and the rest are funded by a combination of the different jurisdictions I mentioned before. We also have a service for persons with disabilities in Napa and Caldwell. Those are our federally required, what we call ADA paratransit services, and we don't provide those services in Meridian because the services that are going through Meridian aren't required to provide those because they're limited stop and only during the peak hour. Our business model for regional public transportation is a model of coordinated mobility where all of our services are organized under our Valley Connect plan, and they divide up into traditional public transportation, community transportation, and commuter services. And the City of Meridian really has some services under each of these categories. And then it's all held together through our Customer Information Center, which we call RideLine. Under coordinated mobility, we have RideLine, as I mentioned. We did launch our Boise Bike Share system in spring this year, and that's serving downtown Boise. That is, the operations of that is being funded through sponsorships and private partnerships. The initial investment in the infrastructure was through a federal Transportation Alternative Program grant. So through that federal and local partnership, we've been able to launch that system, and it's at least getting a lot of really positive attention, and we're seeing the ridership increase. Under our coordinated mobility program, we also are putting a network of services for older adults and persons with disabilities that Meridian has been participating financially in. We've been serving veterans through what we call our veteran van, and we are also serving low-income job access through a program we call Mobile Village. And we have been working on a healthcare transportation access plan, which is looking at, we got a grant through the National Center for Mobility Management this year, and they're providing technical support and a $25,000 stipend to help us work with healthcare partners in looking at how we can improve people's access. And our particular project is focusing on lowering readmissions. One of the barriers we're finding in our research to people maintaining their health after a hospitalization is transportation, and this is to try to help address that need. A little review of our service design principles. I'm skipping a few of these because I think I've just done this fairly recently with all of you, but just as a refresher, our service classifications, we have classifications that align very similarly to the road system. In our plan, what we call our premium corridor would be those high frequency, high capacity, major regional corridors. This is in our long range plan and encompasses long range plan some type of high capacity service that could be rail based or some sort of dedicated right of way for bus in the in the major corridors like I-84 or some parallel to that, and then Highway 44 as well is identified. The primary routes are regional bus. These, again, too, are high frequency and they connect communities. The intercounty routes that serve Meridian would be a classification of a primary route. Secondary routes are local bus services. Those tend to have lower frequency, but they're more focused on covering and serving neighborhoods. And then we have our special services, which are Americans with Disabilities Act and community-based transportation. We have a classification for rural services and then express commuter type services. Our service design principles are focused on high quality, which is safe, clean, and reliable, providing a full palette of services, whether you're in a rural, suburban, or urban community. That our plan demonstrates regional equity, so there is some type of service for all parts of the region. It's not a one-size-fits-all, but it's the right service for that community. And our design principle around direct, simple, and easy to understand, where we don't provide service in very large loops. We focus on two-way routes to try to minimize the travel time as much as possible, make it as convenient for people as possible. We build our routes around 15, 30, and 60-minute frequencies, again, for the ease of the customer to understand the schedule. And all of it is based on fixed bus stops, so that's predictable locations, and try to make it as seamless and customer-focused as possible. And this is the visual of the plan, and all of those types of services are incorporated in our Valley Connect vision. The other thing around transit is this concept of the competing goals, and we spent a lot of time as we were developing our plan really looking at what is the right ratio. It's not an one or the other, but what's the right ratio? And our board years ago adopted a policy that 30% of our service hours would be related to coverage services, which are the serving as people that are a little more difficult to serve. It's not as much based on ridership and productivity as much as it's based on covering a lot of area and giving people some access, even if it's less frequent. The productivity side of that equation is when we're serving high demand areas, high frequency. The goal is to minimize the subsidy and have as much ridership as possible. So this last year we did a couple of community surveys. One, we surveyed riders, and we also surveyed what we call non-riders, or the community, to get their input on some issues around public transportation. This is something we'd like to do every few years, just to keep our finger on the pulse of what's working and not working, and it's great input into our planning process. I do have a more detailed summary of that I'll leave behind, but I was going to keep this while we went through the slides, and there's, again, more detail here. We conducted the surveys on our Valley Ride buses in Boise and Napa Caldwell, the Intercounty, all the routes basically, and Boise State University shuttles. 857 surveys were completed between April 28th and May 1st. The consultants who did the survey planned for 400, so they were really excited about people's willingness to participate. We ended up with a margin of error of just plus or minus 3.3%. At a 96% confidence interval. So this is a statistically valid survey that we did. Our overall findings were that half of the riders are between 18 and 34. And if you compare that to the general population, we tend to trend younger in our ridership. Riders are more likely to have household incomes of less than $20,000, which also could be representative of the fact that we have a younger demographic. And probably the way the services are designed, we probably tend to have more low-income riders, because for some, that, as you'll see in the survey results, they're very reliant on the system. 1/4 of our riders are self-disclosed as frequent riders, and more than 2/3 state they rely on the system for nearly all their trips. So that's, to me, a pretty remarkable number. And it tells us that with as limited of a service as we provide, the fact that so many, such a high percentage of people rely on it for nearly or all their trips, they are people who really probably don't have a lot of other options. Work is the most common trip purpose, followed by school and appointments, and that the average rider takes 23 trips per month, which is what we would expect for people who are using it primarily for work, because that's about how many work days there are. And the overall riders are somewhat to very satisfied with service. And to be really honest, I was kind of surprised at that, because we also get the feedback that we don't operate frequently enough, that we aren't our span of service. But I think, again, the people who are riding, if they don't have a lot of other options, the good news is at least they're satisfied. They've made that system work for themselves, which is good. Just over half of all of the riders state that they have a driver's license. So again, there's a fairly large demographic that are riding that don't. Fewer than 1/3 have access to a vehicle, and that vehicle might not be very reliable, but they do. But then there's 2/3 that don't have access to a vehicle. Saturday service was identified as an area for improvement, both in Canyon County and Ada County, because we have very limited Saturday service in the Boise area, but we have no Saturday service in Ada County or Canyon County. And 3 out of the 5 that were claimed that the span of service, how early and late the buses run and how often, don't often meet their expectations. The community survey, we had 405 interviews that were conducted between April 18th and September 7th, or I'm sorry, August 18th and September 7th. This had a plus or minus margin of error of about 5% with a 95% confidence interval. What we found in this survey, again, some of the highlights, that 9 out of 10 residents that were surveyed have heard of Valley Ride. So there is good name recognition of the service. We also found that the awareness of commuter ride, which is more, hasn't been as well known to the general population, though that's doubled since 2007 to 38%. So people are becoming more and more aware of alternative transportation options. The awareness of transit service is somewhat lower in Canyon County, but you would expect that service has been there a little less time. 2/3 of the residents state that they are supporters of public transportation in the valley, and 1/3 have a positive attitude regarding how well Valley Ride meets their expectations. So again, with as limited as our services are, I think we'll take that as a compliment. So. 1 in 5 residents believe that if the service was more convenient, they would have a high potential to use public transportation. So again, that pent-up demand is out there. They would use it for special events and commuting to work or school. And I think pointing out that comment about special events, many people who come here from other places or have traveled to other places using public transportation to get to ball games and concerts is just the way to do it. So we do have an opportunity to leverage people's positive experiences with public transportation in other places, and that, to me, points out that people do think about those things. The three most important growth-related issues that were identified, and this was not, we didn't ask people to rank order them, they came up with these on their own, was traffic congestion, public transportation, and the economy and unemployment. About 3 years ago, we did a similar survey, and of course the economy and unemployment was the highest, most commented issue, growth issue in our region. Residents agree that there's value to having public transportation. 3 out of 5 residents stated they were either strong supporters or moderate supporters of public transportation. And compared to other communities, what they primarily believe that when you compare getting around by car, that our region is better than other places. If you look at walking and biking, that we're about the same as other places, and it doesn't surprise us to note that that public transportation, when compared to other places in our region, they would say is worse. We also did outreach to our elected officials and our board members over late last fall, early this year, to get a sense of what's important to the communities that we serve from their perspective. And pretty much everybody we talked to, economic development is foremost in people's minds, and building more opportunity for business growth and increasing the employment base in our communities. We heard a lot about emphasizing sustainable, livable, healthy communities, and this was both urban and rural, Ada County and Canyon County. These kinds of issues came up in the discussions, and that expanding community connectivity is foremost in a lot of communities' work plans, increasing paths, sidewalks, and bike lanes. There was a recognition that transportation plays a key role in economic development. It was noted that that's roads, public transportation, and airports, that people really are thinking about this as an integrated system and not just one type of transportation or another. Urban areas, there was a more focus on public transportation as a way to provide commuter options, reducing traffic congestion. In rural areas, their view of public transportation is really serving those underserved populations. I think being able to have seniors and veterans and youth be able to live and recreate and get around in their communities where they may not have other types of options. Our service activities, just a quick update. These are the routes that directly serve Meridian. The Route 40 is our Napa Meridian Express. Route 42 is the Napa Meridian Limited Stop. That's the route that operates all day. They've been in operation since 2005. We started the Saturday bus in the fall, and I've got a report on some of that ridership for the end of the presentation. Community Link is the service for older adults and persons with disabilities, and the Meridian Senior Center has been participating in that program. There's a little bit of we've had a little hiccup with our federal funding partners that we're working through. We have that $350,000 in our large urban area that's available. There's $250,000 available in the small urban area, and we're getting through an agreement with FTA on how Valley Regional Transit coordinates that. They're used to those fundings going directly to senior centers, and our business model is to try to consolidate or coordinate the administration so that each senior center doesn't have to administer their own program. They're delivering transportation rather than worrying about federal reporting and that sort of thing, that we become the administrative entity. And it's a business model that FTA is not familiar with, and so we're working through some of those bugs. But we still are, Meridian Senior Center is still out providing services, and hopefully within the next few months we'll get some of those bugs worked out with our federal funding partners. We have initiated an analysis of our Western Ada County and Canyon County service structure. This is going to be an analysis and a recommendation for how to restructure those services to better fit the funding levels that we have. So my just kind of thinking through what this will look like to kind of prepare you would probably be some options of, if we stay the same, so do nothing option, against a very scaled back, what can we do well with the amount of services we have, rather than the be all things to all people approach. And then with what would it look like if it really was funded in the way that sort of the more visionary option, to see, so you can compare where we are today with where we think the service could be someday, and what are the steps to get there. So that is underway. I talked to you when I was here the last time about our Public Transportation 101, and this is an opportunity. I really appreciate some feedback. We have a lot of the elements of this kind of pulled together. The one thing that I'm curious about, I understand how busy elected officials are, and I know that the grand vision of every elected official to go through the program in its entirety, because we're trying to not only do a breadth of information, but to go into some depth of information. So there really is an understanding. And one idea that I had was doing an academy sort of approach, where one or two or more council members, elected officials from each city could participate, and it would be an opportunity to work with your elected officials throughout the region. So not only would you be gaining an understanding about what public transportation might mean to your community, but you are also able to appreciate how it affects the rest of the region as well, which would require a couple of people to commit to a series of meetings. And my thought is, if we do an academy style, maybe do it each year and have council members go through it each year. The other option is that we could bring it to the elected bodies and try to meet with all of you and do it through work sessions. I think that one's just because of the scheduling, it would be a bit challenging for us, but we'd be committed to at least prioritizing maybe some of the larger cities where we're working on service issues, and prioritize especially the urban cities in doing that. So my question is, in our discussion, and is how do you think that could best work? And then I wanted to thank you before my remarks for your, we appreciate your support, and have always appreciated. And we are one of your neighbors and a member of your community, and that's something that means a lot to me personally, and I've been really excited about our new location. It's not so new anymore, but it's been great to be in downtown. And just so you have the information that we sent, each year we send out our funding requests. I just thought you'd get a summary of that compared to the year before. With that, I would appreciate any comments you have on the Public Transportation 101. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Council, any questions? I guess I have, that jumped up $40,000, what that's related to.
I think that 167,000 probably doesn't include the 30,000 for the senior centers. I'm guessing that because it was something that I had thought about after I'd asked our staff person to put that in there, that the total increase request was 2.5% for this year. So the 30,000 we showed here for the senior services wasn't included in that 167,000. So we haven't actually invoiced you for that full 30,000 yet. We invoice you as we do trips, so you're only paying for the service that's delivered, but you have budgeted the last few years for 30,000 for the senior center service. So I apologize, that's confusing. So your actual amount is about 100, that you budgeted last year was around 197,000.
Hey, can you tell us how that service has been working with the seniors?
It's getting better all the time as far as the coordination. I think the first year there was a little bit of just trying to learn new communication and understanding what the system was intended to do. There's, I think, a higher level of collaboration and cooperation in the system now, and we haven't really done as the kind of marketing that we will do eventually, because I still want to get these bugs worked out with the FTA. So in terms of what the delivery of services from Meridian Senior Center, they are participating fully. They actually came and participated in some working groups to help us figure out how to make this a more regional system, and have been participating at that level. Eagle Senior Center has signed up to be part of the network, and they will also be serving Meridian trips, because people will come from Eagle to Meridian. They will do some of the edge services in Meridian that that Meridian Senior Center isn't operating those hours. So it kind of is a way to expand options to Meridian residents, but it doesn't have to be a particular provider. We want to think of it as a service provider. The other thing that Eagle Senior Center is doing is they've agreed to test our reservation system so that we can start coordinating the trips more effectively. And they've also put their vehicle in the vehicle sharing pool. So I think we'll be able to demonstrate through the Eagle Senior Center how this system could work. And I expect that as we do that, we'll get more other senior centers wanting to participate as well.
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Byrd.
Kelly, on the Saturday route, that 60,000, in your opinion, for the ridership that we're getting on that, we could put that 60,000 in a better place, I believe.
There, Madam Mayor, Councilman Byrd, there probably are some other kinds of options we could look at. I think one of the things, as we looked at ridership, we had September, there was about 109 rides, which I think the novelty of it got a lot of people out and trying it. October, we had 63 rides. November, we had 126 rides. So there was, again, a lot of interest. And then when winter came, it just tanked and went to 17 rides the entire month of December. We have data missing from January, but I'm guessing January was probably very similar to December's ridership. And then since February, we're seeing a steady climb from month to month. What this might be telling us, and what we'll know at the end of the summer, is this a seasonal route, where maybe it's something that could be done and marketed to a more seasonal audience, especially, and that's why we want to see what happens in the summer. We started it in August last year, so it was after school was in session, and so I'd like to reserve judgment on that until after. We are more than happy to come back mid-year and offer some suggestions on ways we can change the route to get more productivity out of it and increase and improve your return on investment. But I think that's a very fair question, and I think it's something that we should look at.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Comments? Okay. I just have a request, and I know that we all struggle to say what kind of services our citizens are getting. And have you put anything together in terms of VRT services by city or agency? You know, by service class, number of bus stops, number of routes, the ridership by stop, and I don't think you know this, but how many of them are Meridian citizens, and then versus the contribution of each of the agencies.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, we with this route restructure, that's all data we're going to really dig into and look at. We do have ways of collecting that data and have on our website, on the Valley Connect plan, there is a list of all the existing services by community. So we're able to say at least what's available. I think the level of detail you're talking about is something that we need to do in relation to the route restructure. So as we're going out to the community, they see, you know, the hours of service and as well, not just the different types of services. And those are on the Valley Connect plan divided up by the premium, primary, you know, the different types of services. And then the other, I lost the last thing you asked as far as information.
The contribution.
Yeah, and then we do provide the contribution is we keep track on a more in our internal processes, but we haven't done that on an external way.
Can you put something together so this council
Yeah,
can see that during
yeah.
budget?
And one of the things that we're working on that'll be part of the Public Transportation 101 is also a profile of the types of passengers we serve, because I think there's kind of a facelessness to our passengers. And what we want to do is not necessarily show you a person, but more of a demographic of this is what different types of passengers, why they use the service, and compare that to the demographic of the community. So this would be the average income in Meridian, and this is the, we can talk about how many trips are generated in Meridian in our systems, whether those individuals are Meridian residents or not. The only way we could track that would be through our surveys. And I don't know for sure. I can check if we actually asked that question, and we may have asked that question in this last survey, because that would be the only way, in that point in time sort of approach.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. Any thoughts on the Public Transportation 101 in terms of those two approaches, or a third alternative?
Madam Mayor, Kelly, some of my thoughts on that is, the first thing you got to do is you got to deal with funding and get people to understand the funding. I think you need to get people to understand the planning that's been done and the plan that's in place that is not funded. Get people to understand what that plan could do, who it could serve. From there, go to what you have and who you do serve, which is different, and what's the funding gap, and start addressing the issue that, well, nobody rides the bus, so why should we spend any money on public
Right.
transportation? Because we have a system that's essentially bare bones. It isn't convenient for people to use, therefore they don't. So you've got to get people educated through that. So at some point in time, there's enough folks in the population that want the services understand what's going on, that the people that are trying to provide the services understand, so we can get some funding sources to get some of this stuff in place. Because in 20 years, we're not going to be able to build any more lanes.
Yeah, yeah.
And if we grow the way we're projected to grow, we do need some options.
Great.
Or human carrying drones. I don't know what to.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
That would be interesting. Traffic control alone.
Drop me
Okay.
off somewhere.
Any other feedback for Kelly in terms of the questions she's seeking feedback on? Mr. Kavner.
I think Councilman Roundtree hit the nail right on the head. I think that being provided in conjunction with some form of an academy would be interesting. I think it would appeal to, a lot of council members and elected officials from around the region. So I think that the logistics of that, I think, work better than trying to wrangle an entire group as part of a workshop
Yeah,
setting wouldn't be as successful. So that would be the direction I would take. But I think there's a lot of data and storytelling that would need to happen before that,
Okay, thank you.
my opinion.
And I think what I'm hearing is cut to the chase, make sure it's meaningful, and that those are the kinds of things that would be meaningful to you as council members, and that the academy format would work as long as we're making sure that we're using that time wisely. Is that a great summary of that? Okay, good.
And you might ask each of the local elected officials to bring a state-level official, elected official with
That's an
them.
excellent idea. That's an excellent idea.
So you had reports to give to Madam
Yes.
Clerk, and she'll get those to
All right,
us. Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly.
There were no items moved from the consent agenda, so item 7A under action items is a public hearing on our CDBG. And I'll turn this to Sean.
Madam Mayor, members of council, thanks for the opportunity to be here this afternoon to talk to you about this. I hope to be quick, but just give you a bit of refresher of why we're here and what we're doing. The community center facade project was eliminated just due to ineligibility. The staff has identified 3 projects to fill that hole that was left by the community center, one of which is the slum and blight plan. Basically, what we're going to do today, Madam Mayor, is I'll ask you to open up the hearing for today, barring any comments that the public might have, or if there are no comments, then we'd close the public comment period as of June 12th. So pursuant to any comments that I would receive by Friday, and then you have a resolution that will be with you next Tuesday for the consent agenda that would be approving the substantial amendment.
So the public hearing is open until next week.
Madam Mayor, the public hearing is open today, as soon as you open it, and then we just have to have one.
You're taking public comment via writing then?
Correct.
Okay.
And so they can still come and talk to me up until Friday.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to offer testimony on this item? I see a lot of faces. Why aren't you getting up?
They think it's a good
Okay.
plan, Madam Mayor.
It was hopeful. Any comments or questions from council on this item?
Madam Mayor, just maybe a brief description of the projects that have been pulled back in, if you might.
Absolutely.
Go back to your previous slide and just tell us a little bit more about those.
Madam Mayor, members of council, this is the direct homeownership assistance. That's Boise City Ana County Housing Authority. We worked with them in the past. We're going to work with them again next year for the action plan. That is down payment assistance and minor costs for first-time home buyers or low-income home buyers in Meridian. The Parks and Recreation, that's the Story Park ADA upgrade. It's not a new facility. That is an actual ADA upgrade to that existing facility. And then the slum and blight plan is something that I have to develop an RFP out so that we can get a competent authority to come in and do a study so that we can have some justifications to do slum and blight projects like the community center in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Okay. Well, on this item, we'll go ahead and put it back on the agenda next week for your action. So this public hearing will be open through June 12th.
Madam Mayor?
Work, Mr. Neri.
My question. How does what work, Madam Mayor?
That the public hearing would be open only through June 12th and not until our next council meeting.
I think what I heard Sean say is, I mean, they can submit anything up till Friday. Certainly, if I don't know if there's a regulation that prohibits it from being all the way till next Tuesday. I don't recall that.
Madam Mayor, just a little bit of backstory on this. The 2 publications that we use when we put them out, which are Idaho Statesman and Valley Times, they publish 3 days apart. So I'm giving people an extra 3 days to submit to me by phone, by email, or in person for that matter. But we just have to have a public hearing. So this meets that intent of having the public hearing. So closing it pursuant to comments that I received by Friday, any of those comments would be recorded, and but whatever I would need to do to include them with next week's resolution.
This would need to be continued until next Tuesday, so,
Yes.
which would keep that public hearing open until then.
Madam Mayor, members of council, I guess if he receives something after Friday, then I guess it would be up to the council to decide whether to accept it at that point.
And Madam Mayor, there's no reason why we can't continue it until next Tuesday. There is a resolution that is already ready to go through for approval of, regardless of what we get.
Okay.
The tw-
Just trying to understand it.
Madam Mayor,
Miss Madden.
so if we not make a motion to close the public hearing on the 12th? Now, if he wants to put it on the, if he wants to put it on the, okay, so we can't make a motion today to close it on the 12th. And so we'll be able to be on the consent agenda. If we continue, it'll just have to be a regular agenda item.
Yes.
Okay, so I do need a motion to continue this and leave the public comment period open until our next meeting.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Kavner,
I move we continue this public hearing on the Community Development Block Grant fiscal year 14 substantial amendment to June what's it?
16th.
2015.
Second.
have a motion and a second to continue this item to June 16th. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All ayes, motion carried. Thank you. See, you baffled us.
Thanks, Sean.
Item 8A is under our Parks Department, Parks and Recreation Department, sorry. I'll turn this over to Steve.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. This month is Parks and Recreation Month to present our strategic update to you, and I am pleased to be here before you with several of my staff present, and to say that I am proud of what this group behind me has accomplished as a team doesn't do it justice, but I hope to highlight for you a few of the highlights that have been accomplished, what we're working on, and a look at our strategic look into the future is what we are planning to focus on. So we'll kind of try to keep this moving, and we have this broken into 4 sections. We'll start with the department overview, then we'll drill down into the Parks Division and the Recreation Division specifically, and then we'll go from there into the strategic focus, looking out into the future. So first, with the department overview, I want to start with vision, mission, and values items. The city has done a strategic plan and has come up with some familiar phrasing, but an update to that in its citywide vision. By 2013, Meridian will be the West's premier community in which to live, work, and raise a family. And I challenged our staff with this master plan update that we are currently going through, that you're aware of, to ask the question, how do we as a department help to implement the city's vision? So what they've come up with is that Meridian Parks and Recreation is a premier department that provides family-focused opportunities for the Meridian community and responds to a growing and changing population. Now, the city's mission, city has a mission statement that's new, and I love. We love Meridian. It's our town, and our mission is to cultivate a vibrant community by delivering superior service through committed, equipped employees dedicated to the stewardship of our community's resources. Well, that fits every department in this city. So, what is our department's mission? How do we fit into that? The Meridian Parks and Recreation Department's mission is to enhance our community's quality of life by providing innovatively designed parks, connected pathways, and diverse recreational opportunities for all citizens of Meridian that creates lasting memories. I think that pretty well summarizes what our mission as a department is to support the city's overall mission. Now, the city's values are our values. You know them well. They go with the acronym CARE: customer service, accountability, respect, and excellence. And I don't know if I'm using the terminology right, but outside of all of our departments, all the departments have selected 3 words. Ours are quality, community, fun. You probably recognize that graphic from outside. I'm familiar with the fire departments. When they were across the way, I think there's our dedication, loyalty, and tradition, if I remember right. And now the Public Works, environmental departments across the way from us, and theirs include inspection and I have to look down. Stewardship is one of their main focuses, and compliance. So I don't know if I'm using the right terminology, but I'm going to call these focus areas. And we've done some work to try and put some meaning behind those words. And I won't take the time to read them to you, but I just wanted to make you aware that we have been working on that as part of our strategic plan and working to try and figure out how they roll into the new citywide strategic plan. So staffing. Our department consists of 22 year-round staff, but at times like this, when we're fully staffed for the summer, we get up to 68 total when you get all of the seasonals and everyone all together. In addition to that, we've got our independent contractors that do this 80-20 split with us and teaching at the community center and things, and we got about 27 of those right now that are under contract. But this year, what I want to highlight here, Jeanette and Jake, would you just stand for a second so we can see you? There they are. Jeanette joined us in January. Jake joined us in February when Patrick left. And both have been just wonderful additions to our department. And, you know, I don't have a slide built in here to recognize the rest of the admin staff. So Rachel, Shelley, is Allie down here? Would you guys just stand for a second? While there's not a slide in our strategic presentation that talks about strategy, the things we do wouldn't happen without, as you know, our committed administrative staff that help things happen behind the scenes, and I want to thank you very much for what you do. So let's drill down into the Parks Division. This is the slide that takes the most math, but by the numbers, we have 244 acres that are currently developed. You can see the breakdown there. We also have 39 acres at 37 other sites that we maintain by contract. Our level of service, if you calculate the 244 developed acres with a population, the latest number we have. You can tell
Where'd
me if
you
think-
get it?
We got
Where
it
are
off
you
of
getting it?
off Compass. Compass's website is where we got it.
Send that to the state for revenue sharing too?
So I've tried to call Compass a couple of times as we've been putting this together to test the numbers, because we have a second number that's floating around that's 91,000.
Compass
But,
likes it because
Every number we can find is over 90 today, but there is a 91,000 and change number, and there's
I
this
think that's the
94,000 number.
approved
I think
number.
that's.
You think the 91 is the right number?
The one we've approved.
Okay,
Yeah.
then we will update this to reflect that,
Good,
number.
that gives us better acres per thousand.
Yeah, it'll be 2.65 with that. You know, I think when I was before you a couple of years ago, we were looking at similar numbers in terms of acres, but a lower population, and our acres per thousand was right at 3. So really, since the opening of Kleiner Park 3 years ago, we haven't really opened a major new park and the population has continued to grow. Thus, the acres per thousand has shifted slightly down. But we do have many projects on the horizon. We have 135 acres of undeveloped parkland, and if all of that were developed today, we'd be at 4 acres per thousand, which that's the goal we're trying to reach, is to get to 4. And if we developed all that today, plus the other few that we have out there on our horizon, like Hillsdale, Bolano, sites that we don't own yet, but that we know are coming, but looked all the way out to the projected 2040 population of 151,000, those alone that we already own would put us at 3 acres per thousand. So, maintenance. Roger, would you raise your hand? Right there, Roger Norberg. He oversees he oversees the crews. He's our foreman. There is so much going on the maintenance side of the Parks Division. It alone could make my head spin some days, but I want to highlight a few accomplishments. One, I highlighted just a few things to hit because I'm not going to take the time to go through the entire slide. But Settlers Park, that at the tennis complex, that kiosk that's out there, where the information kiosk was built in-house in our fabrication shop by staff. The Heart Safe Meridian AEDs, I want to give a shout out to Chief Niemeyer over here and his staff for working with us and to get those AEDs deployed to parks and facilities, and Roger's been at the front lines of getting those deployed in combination with the fire department. Upcoming, the additional drinking fountains with bottle fillers is something that we're interested in and working on. And then we've committed to getting the council afloat. There are many things that could be highlighted, but I thought that might be a fun one to acknowledge. In the photos, you'll see those charcoal grills. Last fall, we held our first disc golf fall classic, and the proceeds that we earned from that went to funding these additional charcoal grills at Tully and Story Parks. They've been installed, and our commission team building event tomorrow night is going to be in Story Park to give them one of their first tries. So we're also proud to have been involved with others, primarily through the Human Resources, Information Services Department and J.C. Jones' efforts with the historical walking tour markers, and Roger's maintenance staff were deeply involved in getting those deployed. We have a number of Scout volunteer projects, and this Scout in the upper right actually just received his Eagle Scout just 2 weeks ago. And very proud of what we are able to do in offering projects like this, and we're very grateful for the things that receive, everything from picnic table boards and sawhorses, and Lakeview Golf Course has been a great beneficiary of projects out there. We have one that's upcoming soon, planting trees at the Heritage Middle School ball fields. Jay Gibbons, would you raise your hand? Jay is our Parks and Pathways project manager. Many projects have been underway over the last year. Two that I want to highlight are the new restroom that's in Centennial Park. It's a new prefab style that we're testing out for the first time, and has been very well received. And then the Rail with Trail arterial crossing study, which was presented to you at the end of last year. I know you're familiar with. Jay was project manager over that. I know you also know that he was just in front of you a couple weeks ago talking about updates to the Pathways Master Plan. So many projects going on there. Two of which I wanted to highlight that are underway. The Kleiner Park Playground, we're going to be installing a statue of Ben Kleiner, and actually will give you more on that here shortly when we talk about Gene Kleiner Day. But the actual the installation itself, Jay's been overseeing. And the in 5 Mile Creek Pathway, he's been working on 2 key easements to get that pathway connected down from Badley to Fairview that we're anxious to get connected. Let me go back. Lest I forget, the 8th Street Park improvements, we had our ribbon cutting ceremony in November, just last fall. New playground, new picnic shelter, and the new restroom. Wonderful new amenities, and we cut the ribbon on those near the end of last year. So we currently maintain 15 miles of pathways, which is split about half and half in parks, and then others like Bud Porter that are along creeks and canals. There are also out there a number of pathways that we don't currently maintain that are maintained by HOAs. As we looked at what's out there, about 4 of those 14 have been added by development that's occurred just in the last year or two since our last update. to council on the Pathways Master Plan. Mike Barton. Mike is the Parks Superintendent and leads the charge on our capital projects. We have a new irrigation well at the 77 acres that we own down south. We came before you with budget requests for money to build that well, so we didn't lose our water right. Just want to report to you that that is done, and we have that well in place and ready for future park development. Many projects that are underway, some including the Meridian Road Interchange landscaping project. That's the interchange is under construction. We should see work starting later this summer, I believe, on the landscaping, and coming to us this fall for maintenance. We're also working on the pergola or awning in front of the Kleiner Park Concessions building, and that's been identified for at least a year and is moving forward as we've been going through bid processes and getting the design right. I think the two to highlight the most, though, are the Story Bark Park development. The new dog park development is going great. It's ahead of schedule. We won't be able to open it as soon as the construction folks leave, because we do have to give the grass a little bit of time to grow some roots before we turn dogs loose on it, but it will be open this summer. So, but think of it as later in the summer. And we'll be working on grand opening dates and things like that as we move forward. And we're taking the commission on a tour of that tomorrow night. And then in April 24th, we dedicated the Settlers Village Square tennis court complex. So some wonderful new amenities out there at Settlers Park. Urban forestry, Elroy. Elroy is our city arborist. And we now have been at Tree City USA for 13 years. We went to the state capitol, received our award in April of this year. We've had many projects underway with the Shade Tree Project in conjunction with Idaho Power, adding trees to the Kleiner Arboretum, which is a wonderful hidden gem that we highlighted on our parks tour last fall. And I want to come back to the top one on the slide, which is the Arbor Day celebration at Ponderosa. Every day we do an Arbor Day celebration and plant a tree. This year, Ponderosa Elementary made a little video of that event. It's only a minute or two long, and they shared it with us, and I would like to share it with you if this technology works. So, Rachel, can you? Year we plant a tree at one of our schools and celebrate that with the kids of Meridian. And this year at Ponderosa, usually we have the leafy trees, as I would call them, but at Ponderosa we planted a pine. It's a Jeffries pine, which is a close cousin of the Ponderosa pine, and a little more rare. So one that we wanted to get out there and in the community, and they're very excited about their cousin to the Ponderosa pine at Ponderosa Elementary. And kudos to Elroy and for always putting together these events. I think this slide's worth celebrating because I think when we were looking at this last time I can remember talking about, we were about at 50%. But with the last couple of years of tree box replacements in downtown, we're down to 29, which we finally can see that we're making some progress. I expect that if we continue on the pace that we're at now, we should have those outdated boxes fully replaced in about 4 years, Elroy. So we're very excited to be zeroing in on that, and every year we try and do a number of tree box replacements in the downtown, and this year is no different. Oh, looks like I kept the red line. There we go. Now we're going to the Recreation Division. So that's it for the Parks Division. We're moving on to Recreation, where we will start off with Colin Moss. Colin, would you raise your hand right there? Colin, as everyone knows, is in charge of our community events, and our community loves those events, and they come out and participate. Won't go through them all, but I want to let you know last Friday night was our first Cable One movie night of this season. So the movie night season has kicked off and is underway now every Friday night through June, July, and August. The community block party, which is coming up at the end of the summer, I want to highlight just because it's going to move from Settlers Park to Kleiner Park. And Colin is really focusing on growing that event into something new and bigger for our community. And then, of course, the work that goes on with the Winter Lights Parade and Christmas in Meridian is just phenomenal. And of course, want to thank Joe Borton and Borton Lakey Law Offices for their support of that event every year. But in addition to putting on our own events, as JC could testify if she was here, because I know her staff's also involved in TUPs, but there are a lot of these TUPs, the temporary use permits, that hold events that are specifically held in parks. Last year, there were 53 TUPs for a total of 81 event days. So far, we're already at 52 TUPs for 79 event days, many of which are still coming. They're in and coming, but we're already knocking on the door of last year's total, and we're only halfway through the year. So lots of activity and events with events that others put on in our parks.
And I guess I was at Coffee with the Mayor. We had one of the community partners there that had nothing but kind words about Colin. And I think we could say that for all of your employees. But it just goes to show the relationships are important, and so much so that the organizer of Kleiner Park Live did the Kite Fest. She's doing the Kid Fest August 1st. And it's those that really help define and continue to brand our emphasis on the youth and everything that you showed as your focus areas of quality, fun, and whatever the
Community.
third one was, community.
Yep.
So I just wanted to give a special note because Sheila was really excited about some of the things that are coming up.
And Council, you should have all received an email today. You may not have seen it yet, but about Kleiner Park Live and the concert series that's coming out there and the dates. And we're very excited. It's going to be on Thursday nights through the summer, though it's not every single Thursday the way movie night is. So take a look at the schedule, and we hope if you're able that you'll come out and participate. Should have some fun shows this summer. So Gene Kleiner Day is the one I really want to highlight to you because it's very timely. It's this Saturday. The Kleiners are coming to town Friday night. I'll be meeting up with them Saturday morning and taking them on a tour of the city and lots of the park system. You get a little preview of the statue there with the artist Jay Warren in the center. And that is a statue of Gene's grandson, Mike Kleiner's son, Ben. And it is being installed next to the playground by the splash pad, kind of just south of the smaller shelter there. And we'll be unveiling this statue at the ceremony this Saturday. So just a quick overview of what we're doing. The event itself will kick off at 5 p.m. with inflatables, face painting, balloon artists, and vendors. The first of the real ceremonial type events starts at 6 p.m., where we will unveil the bronze statue of Ben Kleiner. At 6:15, we've got some free ice cream coming from Whole Foods, thanks to Councilman Kavanagh and Whole Foods. I think 1,000 cups of ice cream are on their way.
Wow, nice.
So bring the family and come get some free ice cream. At 6:30, there is a performance by the Treasure Valley Children's Theater. And then at 7 p.m. is the Meridian Symphony Orchestra performance that we do to commemorate Gene Kleiner year every year. And like I said, the Kleiners will be in attendance. And Ben Kleiner's birthday's the next day, so I'm going to let you in a little secret, and we're going to have the symphony play Happy Birthday to him at the beginning of the concert.
Steve, I show my mother-in-law Kleiner Park, and the interpretive display,
Yeah.
the video thing did not work.
We discovered that last week as well, and we're on it. It's not fixed yet, but we're trying to get it fixed soon. I don't know if you have any. Okay. We're aware of it, and we're working on it. We don't have the fix yet.
And I was also curious as to the goose poop.
Yes. So we're in the time of year where we cannot chase the geese. We had no geese in the park at all at the beginning of molting season, and then the geese, goslings hatched, in the surrounding neighborhoods and along the creek there, and have moved into the park, and we cannot chase them off until the goslings can fly. So we're just doing our best to sweep the pathways and the sidewalks, and waiting for the go signal that we can
For those little things to get big enough that you can
chase them
them.
off again. Correct. Garrett White, would you raise your hand? Garrett's our adult sports coordinator, our rec coordinator over sports, and he oversees sports year-round, never gets a break. In fact, winter is every bit as busy for him as summer. And I just want to highlight one thing on his list, which is the Girls Fast Pitch Tournament, which just happened a couple of weekends ago. Councilman Roundtree, I believe, had a granddaughter in the tournament, but through the weekend, the staff put on this tournament. It was at 3 different sites, but primarily at the Heritage Middle School ball fields, because that's really what they were built for, and it was great to see they're being used for girls fast pitch as intended. And but the number of complimentary words that have come to me from different departments, just people in the community about the attention to detail at that event just was awesome to me, and I wanted to highlight that for you and share that. So, good job. We continue to grow in sports teams as the community grows. The demand for sports also grows. We're only partway into 2015, so continue to watch for those numbers to increase.
And can you add a few more sports? I think you just need a few more colors on there, Garrett.
It truly is amazing what Garrett does. Looking at our ball fields, they are maxed out with what we have available out there today. looking forward to building additional fields with future parks and expanding the program. Gym usage also maxed out with the available sites that we have, and again, also something that we are continuing to work on. Jake Garrow was introduced at the beginning as one of our new staff when he's over classes and camps. When Patrick Dilly left us at the beginning of the year, we were incredibly fortunate to find Jake. We lured him over from the city of Nampa, and what I want to highlight from Jake is that when he came before you and talked about the fee schedule for the summer activity guide, I think he highlighted new programs, many of which were newly senior related. So we're trying to grow the senior program and offerings. You can see some pictures there of the senior day trip to Shoshone Falls on May 8th, and that was a new one of the new activities that we have offered in this most recent activity guide. Summer camps started yesterday, so that's probably also worth saying. So we now have kids at 2 different sites, Prospect Elementary in the north and Sienna Elementary at the south, as well as the activities that are going on at the community center. See the growth that we're experiencing in our activity guide enrollments, already over 3,000, and summer has only begun, and we haven't even got to the fall activity guide yet. We have had over 2,000 hours of volunteers do projects for us. I highlighted Eagle Scouts specifically, but I wanted to quantify some of that here because Colin oversees the volunteer program with also quite a bit of work and help from the Roger and the Parks Division. But to quantify that, we estimate that we've seen $40,000 worth of savings from the volunteer projects that we have had in the last year. So our last section is our strategic focus, and we want to take just a moment to look forward. So, as you know, we are working on an update to the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. Our old master plan is old and largely implemented, which is wonderful. And it's time for us to take a look out at the future. We have recently completed a survey, and I didn't know we were going to be able to do this for you today, but Rachel, if you'd go ahead. Just yesterday, we received from the consultants the final survey results.
Thank you.
So I'm not going to go through them in any detail with you today, but I did want to share some highlights and give you the report that we just received yesterday. We have provided a copy to the clerk, so if anybody else is interested, they are public record. But those of you that were at the last town hall meeting saw a presentation about the survey results as they were at that point. We did have an additional 300 surveys come in just in that next couple of weeks after the presentation was made. So this document is meant to summarize all of the survey results, including those that came in after that presentation. Probably
Did they
the number
change
one.
much?
I haven't fully digested it,
Okay.
but I don't expect that they've changed a whole lot, but they have been weighted and truthed for populations and demographics in areas of the city. So the theme that comes out again and again is that pathway connectivity is really a top priority for our citizens when it comes to the types of services that we provide. I think the mayor heard that on her listening tour, and both presentations at the town hall highlighted that. Shade structures, interestingly, came out, and give a shout out to our commissioners. Phil Liddell is on a subcommittee. I know Kent Goldthorpe's here as well, but Phil Liddell sits on a subcommittee that is focused on park amenities, and they've been advising us on opportunities for shade in the parks over the past year, and it came out very strong in the in the survey.
Well,
Park
and
amenities,
if we
but-
could get the Ada County Highway District to step up and start funding pathways, that would be something
Thank
really
you.
nice too.
Indoor aquatics. Indoor aquatics scored very high in the survey as a desire for our citizens, as well as a community rec center, community events, more athletic fields with lighting, and a desire for dog parks. So you might recognize all those things as items that we are working on, but they were highlighted in the survey by our citizens as things that they are looking for. And you have much more detail than that quick little overview in the survey results there. So the survey is one major aspect of the master plan that we've been working on. Another one is the level of service. Some key findings that have come out of the level of service, looking at the distribution and the amenity value of what's out there, really confirm that we do have a wide variety of well-distributed recreational opportunities. Our overall level of service is high, parentheses, if accessed by automobile. They did a level of service analysis both by automobile and walkability, and it was certainly more, the level of service was higher if accessed by automobile. But even in the walkability one, they showed that like 98% of youth have access to some type of recreational amenity, even if it's under the threshold that we had set. And we defined that threshold as having neighborhood park amenities and access to a pathway, both within a mile radius. So with those definitions, with the mile radius, that goes with the automobile accessible, 75% of Meridian has that today, and I think that's worth celebrating. We also learned just how important our alternative providers out there are. Western Ada Recreation District, the HOA parks that community development is always looking for when new plats come in, and school grounds. They are key to the what I would call the functional level of service. You know, our goal for level of service we talked about was 4. That's in acres per thousand of what we provide as the city to the citizens. We are not yet able to give you a number of what I would call the functional level of service, including all the HOA parks, because the GIS data that we had available for this analysis only had those HOA parks as points and not as acres. So I think I'd like to quantify that, but that's a future project. And then we'd like to give the neighborhood parks more identifiable character as we move forward. Part of the master plan update has been a look at our SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And I know other departments have shared similar thoughts with you, so I thought I would work in some of the same. The full list is much longer. I just pulled out a few highlights of each. Strengths, we have a very knowledgeable staff with a strong work ethic and great attention to detail. The customer service drive and the natural strength for customer service in this group is a very real one. We do have a quality park system. People talk about it. People move here for that reason. They think it's a great place to live, work, and raise a family because of what is available to them. We know a weakness is pathway connectivity. We know we need rec facilities and gym space. And we know we have limited programming for seniors, teens, and special needs, and those are all things that we're working to address as we continue to grow. Opportunities are more external. Those were internal. So opportunities and threats. Opportunities, there are opportunities for partnerships. We're always looking for partnerships. Always, always, always. And YMCA, West Ada School District, working with the Ewings on Margaret Aldape Park, all represent some of the bigger opportunities that we've identified and are working on. There's opportunities for pathway connections and diversifying our recreational program offerings. Threats, we do lack an ADA transition plan. We know we need to do one. The population growth is currently outpacing our park development, thus the decrease in our current level of service, and we need to address that. And if we don't plan now for life cycle replacement costs, as our system starts to age, we need to be aware of that, and we know we need to be aware of that. So put those out there. I want to let you know that we have 3 sites that we are going to be master planning as part of the process this summer. They include the 77 acres in South Meridian, the Board property in West Meridian, Margaret L. Malpe Park up in North Meridian along the Boise River, and we have dates set for each of those meetings. We hope that if you're available, you will join us at any or all of them. There will be a final presentation of those concept plans at our commission meeting on Wednesday, August 12th. So it'll be a very full summer for us. Future projects and opportunities, 5 Mile Creek pathway connections are being worked on. You just saw in the earlier presentation that the Story Park restroom ADA upgrades are part of the CDBG program public hearing that's open right now. Adventure Island playground resurfacing is now 11 years old and needing to be redone. We're working with the Brighton Corporation on William Watson Park development, though I've been told the name may change. We're looking at adding shade structures based on the input from our commission as well as the survey. We continue to work on Rail with Trail, and we're preparing for future funding coming from the federal government. And then the 77 acres, I mentioned we have the well down there, but we're also getting ready to move into design development and phase 1 construction documents to get ready for what's coming there. We're also continuing to work on the field house and the need for gym space. We are working on developing the partnership with the YMCA and the South Meridian Y, and right adjacent to it with where Marty Hill is, the Hillsdale Park. And then we, with all the growth that is happening, particularly in the rec division right now, and we've had this office set aside for this position with a full-time year-round rec manager. And we'll talk more about this with the budget process, but I just wanted to let you know now that that is a position we are looking to fund. We had originally planned to do it last year and thought the timing was better to hold off a year and come this year. My last slide. Phil Liddell and Kent Goldthorpe, would you raise your hands? And have I had any other commissioners sneak in on me? We have a devoted Parks and Rec Commission, and I'm very grateful for what they do, volunteering their time month after month to overseeing these projects and the work of each of the subcommittees. They're champions of this Parks and Rec Master Plan. They're very interested and involved in the Meridian YMCA facility. They've been very connected and involved in the Story Park Dog Park project. And a very real focus of theirs is the connected pathway system. And we did our very first pathway tour this spring on bicycles, which is the very first time that we were able to have enough of a connection to actually go several miles without just having to go by van. So that was a great milestone for us. Photo at the bottom right of Joe Greer. Just want to highlight Joe is our newest commissioner that joined us at the beginning of the year. And I thank both Phil and Kent for being here today. So with that, I'm at the end of our presentation, and I will stand for questions.
Nice prezi. That was pretty awesome. Directors take note. Council, any questions?
I have none.
Thanks, Steve. Nice presentation.
Thank you.
Good job.
Hats off to your team. This was a great presentation, but it takes the team to give them the material to come up and talk about. So you've seen increased performance in all areas, and that's really exciting to to see that level of service continue to increase. And again, I hear nothing but positive, glowing remarks about all areas of our Parks and Recreation Department, and it's because we have quality people. So thank you for being here today, and thank you, Steve, for your leadership.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve.
Mayor, I do.
Mr.
Steve,
Burton.
just a second. Two things. Coming from, this is for Charlie and I, that two of our tennis buffs that was on us absolutely loved our new tennis pickle. They're getting closer to my age, so they like the pickleball now. They love it. They wanted me to thank you guys for putting it in. Really great. Acres per population. I think it's the old adage, like a speedway. You know, as long as you still got room for people to come, you're okay. It's like if you had a speedway that you seated 20,000, but you only drew 4,000, what's those 16,000 seats sitting empty look like? I like to see the parks crowded. So I don't go off the acres.
Yeah.
I think we're doing great. I think the parks are fantastic. The amenities we've got are fantastic in all our parks.
Thank
Anyway,
you.
thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Further comments, questions? All right. The next item is the mayor's office. Citywide Communications Plan update.
Hello, hello.
Hello, welcome.
Madam Mayor, when she returns, and members of the council, thank you so much for letting me
shortly.
present this to you today. The communications plan, when we get it up here, I'll go through it. You guys have a much larger presentation in your packet. I tried to condense it down for the presentation, so I'll go over the highlights, if you will.
Could you get into it? Mr. President?
Well, she's playing, oh, go ahead.
Casey, how can we get into the, I can't get into mine on my computer.
Yeah, I tried to get in, and you have to load some.
You'll be smarter than I am.
You do.
We can't get into your program.
The type of document that it
Yeah, it's a
is.
PowerPoint, so maybe I'll save it as a PDF and send it
Okay.
to you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I'll do.
Thank you very much.
All right.
I told my
That's
kids
not a
to-
problem at all. So, oh, and this is my first time running this, so hopefully I know what I'm doing. Right there.
Casey, in the lower left-hand corner, if you use the pen, there's left and right arrows to advance you through. There you go.
All right. Well, here we go. So the overview, as you all know, we have experienced aggressive and consistent growth. And what's really important about this when it comes to communications is you need to make sure that you're growing ahead of the pace of the community so that you're able to keep stakeholders, residents, everyone informed. And really the rationale behind a communications plan is because you can't rely on the media to tell your story. That's just not a good plan. So we need to implement numerous ways to get our message out to the community. And then the goal while we're doing that is to continue to build awareness about events, issues, and topics of interest to stakeholders both internally and externally to the City of Meridian, and protect the brand by ensuring one voice represents the city with a common tone and consistent message. So that's really important that when you are getting your message out, it's very clear and along the same lines. So we put together the biggest thing is you need to let everybody know who your target audiences are. So we put together a list of external audiences, internal, and then we've got the council and commissioners there as kind of an in-between the external and internal. It's important when you're talking about communications that you have your key messages defined, especially everyone out there when they're in the community that they know. You just heard Steve in his presentation mention Meridian's a premier place to live, work, and raise a family. He just says that now as part of his conversation because it's part of our key messaging. brand. We're built for business, designed for living. And then we just wanted to develop key messages around our 5 strategic goals: responsive government, safe and healthy, economic vibrancy, strategic growth, and arts, culture, and recreation. So we've put together a lot of communication strategies with the measurement, but the overall action is we want to connect with stakeholders through a variety of methods to disseminate information. And the overall result is return on investment can be measured in resource consolidation with effective communication and streamlined processes. I'm big on streamlined processes. The city will experience significant time savings in promoting events, designing flyers, community outreach, and media inquiries. So community outreach is one of the strategies through flyers, events, newsletters, etc. Measurement, we want to measure that by engagement at events and also our city news reports. All those city news reports we send out via MailChimp, now we can look at all the reports and see how people are interacting with those city news, those bi-weekly updates. Internal communication, we want to keep employees informed, so we've actually added the employees to our city news, our bi-weekly newsletter, so that goes out, and now we can also see how employees are interacting with that newsletter. And then we've also added them to the news release list because we figure if we're sending it out to the media to let them know about a city event or city happening, our employees should know as well. So now we've really tried to bolster the internal communication. And as I mentioned, we can track employee engagement via those city news reports. City website, this is a big question I get a lot. When are we getting our new website? Well, there's a little picture of what it's going to look like there. And the redesign it's scheduled to be deployed to the public in August. I think that's a worst case scenario, but we're hoping for August. It's in-house now, so that's the good thing. We have it all designed, now we just need to get it in and test it. And then the measurement, we want to increase the number of visitors per week from an average of 11,000 to an average of 20,000, 60,000 per month, so we just want to reach more residents every week. Videos, we're doing weekly updates. This Week in Meridian, also called TWIM sometimes. Special projects and city council live streaming, we did move that to YouTube, and the reason was we wanted to reach a greater audience so that people can now watch it on their mobile devices. Before we were kind of boxed in by Windows Media Player, and a lot of people aren't able to pull that up on their devices. So that was exciting. We're on YouTube now with our live stream, and we do want to increase the views on the live stream of city council meetings from an average of 5 to 25 and an increase of 70 to 150 views total. We are seeing more views post-event now than we were before, but those streams, we'd like to increase it, but that's also about getting the message out that we're out there and that people can now view the city council meetings on all devices.
Well, and I guess I'd add some of that we've been talking about the sound quality, and I think that can really enhance the viewership if people were able to hear better. And we talked about that at our meeting yesterday. There's some challenges with our sound system, and our sound system's very expensive, right, Madam Clerk?
Point, Madam Mayor. And then we want to increase the views of This Week in Meridian on YouTube from an average of 60 to 100 per episode, and we're already getting a lot more views on that because we have started sending that to employees as well. Another thing we're trying to really bolster the communication to employees. And on Facebook, from an average of 300 views to 600 per episode. So what we do is we house it on YouTube, but we also upload the video directly to Facebook because video is king on Facebook, and we're getting a ton of views of that video. So if you ever see it, be sure to share that video. We get a lot of hits on that.
Well, and I think, Casey, that's another thing that you've really done is consolidated all the different Facebook and social media pieces so that people are not duplicating, but tagging or sharing so that you do have a better idea of what those views are.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Madam Mayor. And then traditional media, we have the press release and regular updates with local media, and then we do want to implement media training for those that need it or that want it. Just give them some training on what to say in front of the camera, how to make sure that we're getting our message across effectively. And then the measurement of that is the tone of coverage. And then there's always those media stories that we can learn from. So we do appreciate those moments as well. They're hard at the time, but we learn from them. Social media, we streamline communications to more effectively engage the community, as the mayor was talking about. Our measurement, we want to increase in the number of Facebook likes from 2,200 to 5,000. We're up to 2,500 right now. So we really want to see a lot more likes on that page. It's been really fun to see it grow just in the amount it has and how people are engaging with us more on the comments. And even shares. We've had a lot of shares lately too. Twitter from 4,200 to 5,000. LinkedIn from 304 to 500. Nextdoor from 5,000 to 7,500. And then we want to increase daily reach and engagement on Facebook from an average of 500 to 2,000 people. So we've got some goals that we've set, and now we are working to meet those. And one of the ways we're working to meet those is we developed a social media best practices, and right now all social media managers with the city have been trained and have reviewed our social media best practices document. And that document includes an overview of the process, so how, if you want to go about starting a social media site, how you do that, involving the communications manager. Communication strategies for posts including tone, best times to post, and consistent branding. The city's social media policies and procedures, we did review those, and now the sites that didn't have it now have our terms of use and conditions, terms of conditions and use. I said that backwards. But they all have a link now on their About section. So, and that was part of the policies and procedures. So we're all following that. How to tag and share other city pages so that we are a unified team and a unified front out there on social media. Crisis communication tips for getting information to the public quickly and driving the message. How to interact with followers and end users, utilizing pictures, videos, and hashtags. The importance of reading social media analytics. So we went over what kind of analytics and reports you can get right from Facebook and Twitter and how you can learn from that to better engage with your audience. How to promote events, and we also went over social media tools available to us, such as Hootsuite, which can help different managers manage multiple social media outlets. And as I mentioned, I'm a process person. I love processes. I love flow charts. So we put together flow charts for every process that you may encounter that involves some sort of communication with the city. Some of those processes include press releases, crisis communication, media inquiries, story ideas, social media, videos, flyers, signs, letters, notices, newsletters, annual reports, events, website content. So all of this has been distributed citywide. So now all of the departments understand if I want to do a letter, how do I involve the communications manager and when? So we have a process for every single step on that. That's all I have. Do you guys have any questions?
Thank you, Casey. Any questions from council?
Great presentation. Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Thanks.
Casey, great presentation. I specifically applaud your specific goals. I think oftentimes we kind of throw vague generalities about what we want to achieve, and I like that you've put numbers behind that. Do you have a deadline, a finish line for where you want to achieve those social media numbers and outreach numbers, and when do you hope to achieve them by?
January 2016. So I'm halfway through. I better get moving on that Facebook likes.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Roundtree.
I see a lot of measurements. I'm not sure that's the right word, but from this to that. But what do those numbers mean? Are we more popular? Are we less popular? Is our message more clear, less clear, more confused? What do they mean?
Yeah, that's a
I
good
mean, they're
question.
bigger number. You want bigger numbers, but what do they mean? How do we find what they mean?
That's a good
To me,
question.
that's a measurement.
Yeah. Councilman Roundtree, I look at it as the larger the number, the more reach we have with and that's, I think the toughest part about the biggest blockade we run into as a city is that we have such a wide demographic that we need to reach, people of all ages. So some of those measurements on Facebook, it means we're reaching a lot more people, but it also means that we might be missing out on a demographic, so we also have to use email because we want to get this demographic over here. So that's why we have to look at the different measurements of all the different avenues that we use to communicate with everyone, because not everyone is on Facebook, not everyone is on Twitter, not everyone is on email. And so that's what we're up against when we develop these measurements. And so I see it as the higher the number, the more we're able to reach in that specific demographic that you're reaching out to via that tool.
So how do you measure your demographic by account? Are they categorized by their response? I mean, to me, that's the analytical part. How do you do it? I mean, sheer numbers don't. Yeah, we're out to more people, but is it folks that have a certain phone, folks that have a certain vent? I'm just curious how you take those numbers and put meaning to them.
Yeah. It's Councilman Roundtree. It's a good question. And I want to look into it more because I think in my analytics I can dive deeper and figure out where these people are coming from and who's seeing different things. So I can dive deeper into that and then make those measurements even more specific about what we're looking for.
But I think before you can do that, you do need to build the numbers and measure by shares, which then reaches other people's contacts as well. And I think what Casey has done very well is continuing to try and drive people to the website where we can get better analytics. Facebook is improving their analytics that they can start better targeting and seeing who is going on there. The best tool I think that we've found is really Nextdoor. And Nextdoor is going to be one of those that have the neighbor-to-neighbor communication going on, but you can use Nextdoor to almost hone it down to a block that you want to communicate with, because there's some trend in burglaries, or you can talk about a water incident, a water main break. You can talk about road construction. You can push information out to this. It's pretty concerning when you go and knock on doors and find out how people are really getting their information. It's not consistent, and when the number one response has been they got their news from Jay Leno, it's really concerning. It really shows how difficult Casey's job really is in trying to find that tool to better communicate. And basically what you find is it's a multi-tool approach to try and get that same piece of information out to as many people.
And I don't make my comment to criticize.
No, I understand that.
If we're going to call them measurements, then we need to know how to analyze them. Are we just mining addresses that we can hopefully mine and use as at least a database for sending out surveys? But I'm still at a loss, and I'm sure, as you point out, it's not easy to figure out how to analyze these electronic messages.
Yeah.
In any form, and whatever format.
Yeah. Councilman Roundtree, I think as we continue to pull out the analytics, I'm going to keep what you said definitely with me, because it is important that if we can define those analytics even more, that's helpful in telling the larger story. And it will help us set goals in the future as well.
Madam Mayor?
Yeah, Ms. Mylum.
Casey, as a social media user, I have noticed a huge increase in participation and sharing and just the posts. I see them a lot more frequently. So you're doing a great job. Keep it up. I think that until we really have to get much larger numbers in order to really analyze them and know who, and to figure out who we're reaching, if they're even Meridian residents or, but I think for the most part, what you're just trying to do is get the message out there, right? Start with reaching human beings, and then, hopefully that will grow to where we're really getting the city's messages out to as much of the community as possible. But obviously, as you've found, it's a slow process, but you're doing a great job.
Oh,
So,
thank you. Thank you.
It is a slow process. I guess another example of the increased communication, benefit is the number of stories the media is now covering. Is they're seeing it posted on Twitter or Facebook, and they're calling KC now and saying, can we get an interview on this? And they're showing up more frequently at events. So it is Councilman Roundtree trying to figure out what it all means, and you'll probably have Casey coming back at some point saying, this is something that will help mine that information better, and we can start seeing what is getting more likes, so we know what people are looking to be informed about. You can see what's being shared to see what are those good feel-good stories that people like to share. A lot of those are the pictures that are taken at the community events. But those are trends that you can find out from your community, what kind of information they're desiring to know more about, even on the hits of the blogs and those kind of things. So yeah, it's a new realm for sure. Okay.
All right.
Well, thank you, Casey. We appreciate your report, and thank you for the work you've been doing and really focusing people kind of laser point rather than just kind of all over the spectrum. So thank you for what you do.
All right. Well, thank you.
Okay, item 8C is under Public Works Department. Max.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, members of the council. My name is Max Jensen with the Public Works Department, and I'm here this afternoon to provide you an update on the City Hall Emergency Standby Power Project that Council approved budget for in FY 2013. This project was assigned to assess current emergency power needs and capabilities and provide recommendations with estimated cost to address the gaps. The work completed to date includes defining an emergency power duration, a time frame for emergency power, and as well the needs for each department in City Hall. We went out and we published a request for qualifications for professional services and executed an agreement to review emergency power needs, verify existing emergency power loads and capabilities, recommend methods to address emergency power gaps, and to provide estimated cost to close those gaps. The results of the methods and estimated costs were reviewed at the directors meeting, and there was a discussion at the directors meeting that the estimated costs were much higher than estimated and greatly above the budget that was set aside for that. There's also further discussion that essential city services during an emergency outage at City Hall could be handled and taken care of at other city facilities as well, such as the police department for public safety, at Fire Station Number 1 for public safety service. Water Division building could handle the needs for the drinking water, and the Wastewater Division building could handle all the needs for the wastewater facility. Each facility has a backup generator at each site as well. So my recommendation with the essential city services able to be met at the other city facilities, I come to you and I seek approval to release the balance of the budget amount back to the general fund and close this project.
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Byrd?
Max, we, first of all, what have we spent so far?
We've spent roughly 20,000.
12,000, okay.
So the original budget was 170,000, and we are down to approximately 158,000.
So we got 158 to kick back in.
Correct.
Thank you. Next, we have a generator here already on site, don't we?
Correct.
And it will take care of the basic electrical, right? I mean, it'll take care of stuff. It won't be emergency setup deal like the police or Station Number 1, which those two were set up to be the emergency management areas. Excuse me. So we do have one here in case of something.
We do, Councilman Byrd. We do have one that's existing here. However, the only items that are hooked up to it are the IT data closets for each floor. So there's a total of 6 IT closets. Also the pumpers for the fire system to put out a fire. It also services the IT server room and the HVAC needed to keep that up and going. Those are the only services that are actually connected to the backup generator that we currently have. And at that, we run approximately 10.5 hours with the fuel capacity that we have.
Other
Go to water.
questions from council? I guess essentially is the review looked at what are the needs, and it ran the whole gamut from, do we need to keep our telephone services up? Do we need computers on what floors and those kind of things? With the recent remodel of the police department, it gave us a backup to the servers and they have a larger generator and certainly a different type of generator. So what we originally thought going into it and making the enhancement request because of some of the other facilities that have been done in the meantime seem unnecessary, because we do have those available, just not here at City Hall. But we figure that if we have a crisis event that puts City Hall down, we probably don't need the workforce that we have in City Hall during that time. And where those essential services are, they do have the right kind of backup systems that will keep us in communication with those we need to be communicating with, and will protect our storage and our data as needed.
I agree.
Okay? So
Let's turn it
make
back.
note, $158,000 back into the general fund. Good job,
Approximately.
Max.
Get her done.
So we can close this project out?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Do we need a motion on that? I don't think we do.
Probably do, because we had it funded.
Okay.
Exact number that we need to quote? Or just
Approximately.
permission to do it?
The approximate 158,000 back to the general fund. or the remaining balance.
Remaining balance.
Yeah.
Okay. Madam Mayor,
Mr. Zaremba.
I move we approve the, what would be a budget amendment, I guess, to return to the general fund approximately $150,000 that was slated for generator upgrades that a thorough study has identified are beyond the need.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, will you call roll?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Kavner.
Aye.
Councilmember Mylum.
Aye.
Councilmember Byrd.
Aye.
Councilmember Roundtree.
Aye.
Councilmember Borton.
Aye.
Councilmember Zaremba.
Aye.
All ayes, wish carried. Thank you, Max.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and council members.
And Max just celebrated 10 years of service to the city, so congratulations on that.
How many?
Congratulations.
Thanks.
10 years.
10 years?
Okay, our next item, AD, is under our Community Development Department, and Mr. Hood.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. It's your lucky day. I am fighting a bug, and so probably won't be as long-winded as I typically am because I'm likely to go off in some coughing fit. So I'll try to just hit the highlights here on the next two topics on your agenda. Bruce Chatterton is also here, though, if you have any questions on the planning fee waiver discussion, which is first up on the agenda. As you all know, from occasionally we do get requests from potential applicants to waive fees in the planning division, and it sometimes creates an awkward situation as they come directly to council for that request. As you know, we don't have any required findings or circumstances that must be present to grant a waiver or deny a waiver for that matter. So the reason for me bringing this up with you today is we've had the past two, there was some oddities, one with the daycare, another one with another business, and proving a hardship, or what's the justification again for waiving these fees. Just as a refresher, when we talked about some of that, there is no such thing as a waiver. There are hard costs that have to be paid. Costs have to be paid to process an application. We work with the clerk's department to notice applications, and we put them in the newspapers and those types of things, and postage and staff time all cost money, right? So again, to get some more structure around this is, I guess, the main question. I didn't come up with a flow chart for you, but the first question would be, should we even process these? Is this something we should even still consider? And I think the answer is yes, but if the answer is no, that makes it pretty easy. We're done. We just say, you can't ask for fee waivers. Someone has to pay that fee. If the answer is, yeah, go ahead and continue practice and allow council to grant those fee requests. The question then would be, what types of findings, if you want to have this more structured, what types of findings or considerations should be present? And I listed in my memo to you today just a few that we've come up with. Is the applicant a nonprofit? So that would be one thing, that if it's a nonprofit. If they're providing some community service, or maybe a community service that isn't already present in our community. If they have a financial hardship, and I don't want to get into reviewing, tax returns to see how much money someone makes and determine, like the federal system does, if there's really a financial hardship there, but some things to consider potentially. So should that be something that's hard and fast, or just something for you to consider? And not no one of those has to be present, or all three or four, however many come up with, need to be present, but just something to kind of noodle around as you get these requests. Excuse me. Payment plans have also been talked about in the past. Is that something, if you grant a waiver or do a partial fee waiver, maybe setting someone up on a payment plan? I would recommend against that, but I'm just trying to, again, bring everyone up to history on what we've done at the council level. You've talked about these options before. So they're not frequent, but it is something that planning would like to have some more structure around. The reason we're talking to you about this now is we did put it in for an enhancement this year. And after talking with finance a little bit more, they're more comfortable processing these, just because they're so infrequent as a, excuse me, instead of a set-aside pot of money line item in the budget, just as a foregoance of revenue as they come in. So that's kind of their direction, was instead of actually having this be talked about and again set aside in the budget, just to have a dialogue with you all. And as these come through and if they're approved by council, it's something where your action would be to forego the revenue at that point in time. So just a discussion item. We can certainly come back, but again, if you want to have some criteria, should we codify that, or should it be just something that is considered on a case-by-case basis? And then I guess that's the end of my presentation, because I promised you I'd be fairly brief. So that's kind of where I'd like to hear your all thoughts on these. Again, we don't get too terribly many of them, but would like to maybe provide a little more structure.
Thank you, Caleb.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Byrd.
I'll try to get through here. I don't know what the devil's wrong. Go ahead and get somebody else.
Between the two of you, I'm not sure I want to get involved.
Any other comments, Mr. Kevin?
Madam Mayor. Caleb, on average, how many of these a year? You seeing 1, 2?
Yeah, we haven't actually processed one since last fall. So it's been almost 18 months since our last one, but on average, we probably get about 1 to 2 a year. But we're in one of those weird cycles where we haven't actually seen one for a little bit, but.
Madam Mayor. Caleb, is this potentially a tool to incentivize activity or development in a particular area, downtown, for example? Making that a eligible criteria like a nonprofit?
Madam Mayor, Councilman Wharton, it's not historically been the way we've kind of couched this. It has been more of a financial hardship type of a system. I mean, if that's one of the things, one of the either prerequisites or one of the findings that you all want to have made there, I guess, I mean, that's a policy discussion for you all. I would just, again, point out, there's no waiver. So if it's going to be, someone's got to pay it. So why should Joe taxpayer have to subsidize, even downtown, that application, depending on who they are? But, I mean, it is something we could do if that's what you all want to do. So.
And Madam Mayor, Councilmember Wharton, you bring up a really important issue, a big issue I've dealt with in a couple of other places. There are jurisdictions that have come up with fee reductions or fee, quote-unquote, waivers as incentives for certain types of development. What we've heard, though, in developing a pilot projects around this is that most developers tell us that planning fees, which is what we're talking about now, or even building permit fees, are such a small percentage of their overall cost to do a project that they're much more interested in reductions in impact fees, for instance, or in finding someone else to pay an impact fee. So what most of our customers have said, well, yeah, that would be nice for you to reduce your fees, but it's not going to make a good project good for the community. It's not going to make a good project. It's not going to make or break it by itself. That's another whole subject matter we could certainly get into if there's interest. But my experience has been that planning and building permit fees are not a big piece of an incentive package unless they're coupled with other things.
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Byrd.
Maybe I can talk now. I would prefer that we, no more than we have, that we continue it on a case-by-case basis, take a look at it and stuff. And as far as bringing an enhancement for $3,700, I mean, our employees are paid anyway, and I can guarantee you that there's $3,700 out there that they're not working on a fee or something, that they're doing. I think that's something that I wouldn't bring it through as an enhancement myself.
And again, Madam Mayor, we aren't. I mean, it's still there, but we're having this dialogue instead of there. Some of the thought process, though, from when we talked about it was transparency. I mean, there's a pot of money. You spend it if you spend it. If not, it gets carried forward. But there's some idea from the community. And then it's not just an open, and we haven't had a problem with this. It hasn't really been, you know, again, one or maybe two every year, which is a very small, I can't remember what Todd told me, but it's like 0.002% of our budget. I mean, it's very, very minor. So we aren't pursuing that anymore, but it was our thought process and why this came up because of discussions last year for the budget. But yeah, we aren't pursuing that at this time.
I think we'd also conceived of it as being a pilot project in case we wanted to see how it worked and build on it if we had a good experience with it.
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Kavner?
I'm not opposed to keeping this on a case-by-case basis, but I think it is beneficial for us to create some sideboards, if you will, of what's the threshold for an organization to come before us, so we don't create a precedent with one that future councils don't want to live up to down the road, or, you know, to change from applicant to applicant. I mean, it's possible we could have two similar applicants within a year that are, one we would agree to fund, one we wouldn't, and I think having some set of criteria is beneficial, regardless if we want to make we don't want a budget for this, we want to make the decision as they're presented, but having some sideboards I think would be beneficial.
Madam Mayor?
Mr. Byrd?
I agree with getting some sideboards, but I don't know how you do that. I can name you a lot of nonprofits out there that got a lot of bucks. Look at what they pay their employees. So how do you do it? I think you just have to go on a case-by-case basis, and we haven't, I don't know, maybe Tammy and Charlie and I have done maybe 6 of them in the years we've been on here.
If even that.
If even that.
How many?
And we've done it on a case by case basis. I just, because there can be some real hardships, and then there can be some thought hardships. So I don't know. And I don't know how you get sideboards myself.
Madam Mayor, I'd also wanted to mention that it was, in this case, in the case of the Boys and Girls Club, the waiver or the forgiveness of those fees was city initiated. So the approach was a little different. But I don't know if you all saw the letter that the mayor asked us to put together. It put down the cost of each permit type, and we asked our contractors on the building permit side to do what they can, and we had all the way from them completely donating their fee to the Boys and Girls Club down to say a 50% reduction in one case. The point there, and I think the mayor's approach was, not to put words in your mouth, Mayor, was that these are real costs, and let's keep track of them. And this is a donation towards an important project. Again, that's a little different than what we're talking about here in terms of a request for forgiveness of fees, but because this is a project that we're very much involved with. But it's important to always track these as real costs. Otherwise, people get the idea that it's not real money.
Don't have any problem at all with that.
I think it would also apply, we're trying to do something similar to the school, what is that school called? Hillsdale School, and the fee waivers to schools. I think it's important to capture that and, you know, let the Board of Trustees know what that forgiveness or the agreement between the city and the school districts, what that actually equates to, because those are numbers, they're hard numbers, and it needs to be captured. So.
Finance's approach towards showing it as a deferral of revenue is revenue left on the table. That demonstrates that it's coming out of the city budget, community development's budget, actually.
Yeah. Mr. Zaremba?
Madam Mayor, it's just randomly bouncing around in my mind here. We have, the Parks Department has a way to help or forgive summer camp fees, although I believe contributions into that fund are voluntarily given. I forget the program.
Care enough to
Meridian
share.
utility billing system has a way to determine whether or not a water bill can be forgiven. And I guess what's running through my mind is if we have this issue in several different places, and maybe we should come up with some kind of a criteria, because I think it is fair to help support people that really have a problem. They need something out of the city, but they can't pay a fee. But I wonder whether we ought to have all departments discuss it and, see what a real criteria might be. That's just a random thought.
Yeah, and I understand your comments, Mr. Zaremba, but each department, there's a big difference. So they do have different criteria, and it will be hard to bring commonalities. Certainly, our Board of Adjusters have their their threshold points. The utility billing has their defined criteria through LADA, whatever organization. They take more of the federal guidelines. The Parks Department is something else under their Care to Share program. So I don't know if there are commonalities that you can make relevant for an across-the-board policy.
Madam Mayor,
Mr. Roundtree.
my preference would get the word waiver out of our vocabulary. Deal with something along the lines of, okay, if you want to request some leniency on those fees, then request a fee transfer. So the fee transfer is from the applicant to the city, or from the applicant to a sponsor, or whatever. Or possibly in addition to that kind of language, an in-kind fee. And it might be, I'm an art studio that wants to have some TIs and come to town in a particular spot, and I might need a rezone, or I might need something, I'd like to waive those fees. The in-kind might be, I'll put a $2,500 bronze sculpture on the corner of X, Y, and Z as an in-kind, as opposed to paying those fees. And then again, you have a fee transfer, but at least it's a fee transfer for something, as opposed to just out of the goodness of our heart if we happen to feel that it's a worthy cause. But the idea of a waiver and having people think that there is such a thing is probably not a good idea. That somebody's going to pay, and if the city council defers their payment, somebody's going to have to pay. Or they're going to donate something of some value.
Madam Mayor and Councilmember Roundtree, I couldn't agree more. The word waiver implies that we're waving a magic wand, and these license fees or whatever is something that it implies that there's no work behind it, no taxpayer money behind it. So I think it's really important, just as you said, that if the fee, basically what you're doing is proposing that someone else pay those fees.
Right.
And so are we finding it out of the city's budget? Are we, as you say, is there an in-kind that benefits the community in some way? That's an idea I've not heard of before, and that's perhaps something we could work with.
Maybe just one point on that, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Staff hasn't historically done any analysis, so usually it's just them working with the clerk to get on an agenda, and like you said, they pull at your heartstrings and you say, yeah, we feel like granting this today or not. So I mean, as long as these are things you all consider, I mean, I think they are, but again, the question was, do you want them more structured? Do you want them right in front of you as you're talking to them, saying, what are you providing some service? Are you giving some amount of that to our community back? I mean, what's the trade-off here? Why should we? I think that may be enough, or we can, I'm not hearing real consensus, at least not to this point, but I just wanted to let you know, really, at the beginning, we don't ask them to find the fee to transfer in or have that. No, that certainly somebody could do that if they're savvy enough to say, hey, in exchange for my CUP fee, I want to donate so many hours of teaching or whatever to the community free of charge. But anyways, just wanted to let you know, there aren't any sideboards now, right? And there's no staff analysis that goes into it, as it probably shouldn't, because I don't know that we would really recommend waivers. We'll find a different term, but.
I think you've heard enough from the council to maybe frame questions that can get you to a certain place. At least when they come in front of council, you can say, these questions were asked. Is there a cost offset? Was this caused by a new ordinance that now we're asking you to comply to, so it was really driven by the city? Yeah, you can look at some of your scenarios, however few they have been, to say, here's a yes or no type of a question that might be of interest to council as they're making those determinations. Or because you're not quite there, you don't really have a strong case to even go and ask for the fee waiver, because you are a for-profit. You just don't want to pay the fee. So.
And Madam Mayor, we don't currently do any screening. It's any and all can come and request that and just get on an agenda. But maybe what I propose, based on those comments, is coming up with some application type of a question. Are you proposing an in-kind donation? Are you a nonprofit? I mean, just have them answer a series of questions as they work with the clerk. You have that in front of you as you're listening to them. You know
And
kind of what
as they have to answer those questions, at least it gets them to think, yeah.
We still wouldn't screen them, but they at least, and so what I'll do, I think, if it's okay, I'll frame that application, those questions, the direction I've heard, and you can add to it some more things you'd like to consider. Obviously, it's not going to be a one-size-fits-all type of application, but we'll have a series of questions that are most typical anyways, and we'll go from there then.
Mayor.
All right.
Yep, I was just going to add, I wouldn't put this in writing, but if it's a commercial enterprise that's asking for a waiver, tell them the city council works on a double or nothing decision.
Subsidize one with the other, perhaps.
You said that on the record. Mr. Borden.
The record reflects there was laughter. Kind of what I'm hearing, maybe a different approach, it goes back to Councilman Cavanaugh's comment, is maybe you look at creating almost a pilot project. Again, what I don't want to encourage is all these new opportunities for people to creatively request waivers and have those all come to council because we haven't given staff any sideboards to measure whether or not it qualifies or not. I don't want them all come to council and then we have to up or down whether an art project qualifies in kind. I think the concept is really interesting to explore, but if we're talking about developing a pilot project that would articulate those specific limited instances when a fee transfer may occur or an in-kind payment may occur for fees that otherwise can't be waived, it seems like it might be helpful for staff if we give those criteria so an applicant is not empowered to ask for a waiver or a transfer. So staff doesn't have to make that call. You can't do waive fees or transfer fees unless it's one of these very limited remote circumstances, whether we're incentivizing particular conduct or not. As we develop this pilot project, we might see that we come up with ideas that might sort of paralyze staff with trying to actually implement it. Because I don't know how you're going to make some of these determinations.
Yeah, and Madam Mayor and Councilmember Wharton, I agree with what Caleb said earlier. Asking, especially community development staff, we're not even accountants or CPAs, to determine a financial hardship is really, we don't even know how we'd go about doing that. So hopefully we can move beyond that and get into the realm of what public good would result from this and what are you proposing to do. Every nonprofit, I don't mean to sound unkind, but every nonprofit will tell you that they're creating bucket loads of public good, otherwise why do they exist?
Right.
And some of them will even say you should be paying us to be doing this. So that mission is foremost in their minds. So it's really just because they're a nonprofit is not reason enough. But perhaps if they are, again, giving something back to the community that wouldn't happen otherwise, perhaps that's a reason to do it.
Madam Mayor, I completely agree with what Joe said about not giving staff sideboards that opens the door for council to become the arbiter of every request for a waiver, that no is the first response. And then along the lines of what you just said, Bruce, is there a public good that could come out of it? Because again, somebody is going to do that fee transfer. The fee's not going to go away. It's going to come out of somebody's budget.
Madam Mayor, to that point, if you're bringing back maybe some bullet point qualifiers that could be up for our consideration as being eligible for those types of transfers or in-kinds, also part of what we would want to implement is that structure to track those costs. So when a project's fee is waived or transferred, that the actual hard cost we are mindful of.
And Madam Mayor, I think I'll go that way. And just to kind of summarize when I do that, bring that back, I think there may even be two different applications or checklists to form. One where it's somebody is saying your fees are too much and there's a hardship here because I just can't afford the whatever. The other one is maybe where we can use it as a tool to encourage development that wouldn't otherwise happen, like you're talking about. So there may be, that's the pilot project, where we can use that as an incentive to say, if you can do these 2, 3, 4 things, whatever downtown or whatever those criteria may be, you stand a pretty good chance, or at least we can. So the first answer isn't no. It's maybe a no to the person that's saying, I can't afford it. But maybe it's, we again use it in pre-apps or other things as a tool to incentivize good projects that we want to see. But like Bruce said, I mean, usually it's not a make or break deal with most of these folks. I mean, our fees are between, $50 and $2,000. I mean, they're not huge amounts of money, but maybe it's something where we can have. So anyways, I think that's where I'll go, because there's really two different issues there. I built an illegal shed, and now I need a variance. Waive my fee for the variance too. Well, you brought that upon yourself, and there's really no community benefit. You're just saying you don't want to pay the fee versus, hey, we've got a nonprofit that'll run this whatever in our downtown. So anyways, I think that's how we can continue that, but that's kind of what I'm hearing is really two different issues. May or may not be of the same form, but.
Madam Mayor, another thought would be, I've heard we're not calling it a waiver, maybe call it a fee deferral. That way, so there's never even a thought in their mind originally that it's going to be waived, but maybe deferred, which could be deferred in a payment plan. It could be deferred in in-kind trade. So there are a lot of ways that it could be handled, but then you're eliminating the word waive, which just sounds like free from the get-go.
Madam Mayor and Councilmember Mylum, you bring up again a whole new area that we've worked with quite a bit in the past. This idea that generally our building permit fees, which are going to be typically a bigger percent of the project cost than planning fees are. Typically, those are due at time of when the permit's pulled. Some jurisdictions, and we did this a little bit in Boise, decided that for certain projects you could defer those fees to the time of certificate of occupancy, meaning that you don't get your C of O and your occupancy until those fees are paid. And for certain projects, that brings the it fits better with the cash flow for the project. Those fees are being paid closer to the time, and I also mean impact fees by this as well. They're being paid closer to the time the developer is actually going to have income on the property. So that's something else, again, that was done for, I've seen done for nonprofits as well.
Madam Mayor, and I'm also talking about even the guy who builds a shed and, oops, I messed up, I have no money, I can't afford it. Do you have a payment plan currently? He comes to us and says, I want you to waive my fees because I can't afford it. I have no money. So it would be a similar thing, but even on the lower scale of, well, we can't waive it, but we'll work with you and, you know, we can set you up at however much a month until you get it paid off.
Madam Mayor and Councilmember Mylum, I would not want to really have, say yes or no on that without finance weighing in, because of often the administrative burden of tracking something like that can be, we already have a big deal with trying to track our sureties right now for major developments. Trying to do that for small ones there could be a considerable administrative burden there. So that, I don't know if it would be.
So it'd be better to waive the fee?
Well, perhaps, or to reduce it, or to, if it meets the criteria, to pay it from the city budget.
Thanks, Bruce.
Any other comments?
No, I have.
That you want to put on the record?
Okay.
Good luck.
All right. Yeah. I'll be back.
Just remember, the answer is no first.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I'm glad that was short.
Yeah, I know. I thought it was going to be the shorter of the two items as well,
I did
so.
This one.
We can show you how to take a 5-minute item and make it 45.
Okay, our next item, you're up again.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's been a while, but before you is what we lovingly call the All Things Transportation Update. I'm not going to go through everything in the memo. I will apologize up front that I didn't include page numbers because that's going to make it a little bit more difficult for you to follow along in your packet. I will make a note that next time to include those page numbers there. I am going to highlight some of the information provided in that packet, but I'm not going to go through all of these by any
You do
means.
have
so.
page numbers.
Oh, there are page numbers. Okay,
Yeah.
so hopefully they correspond with mine because they aren't in the Word version. Did not show up. So. Okay, so on page 2, the first one I wanted to highlight is the Pine Avenue Meridian to Locust Grove project. Brian McClure was before you when was that? In January, and talked to you a little bit about the scope of that project. Well, the scope has actually changed a couple of times just in the past few months, and ACHD just last week approved a new scope for that project that takes into consideration some public works sewer project that's going to go on. So they're going to rebuild Pine from Meridian to 6th. So Brian will be here with the MDC board. This is the joint meeting we talked about last time that got scheduled for next Tuesday. So this is something where Brian and Cody he's the project manager at ACHD, are going to kind of run through that project with you and the MDC board next Tuesday and just kind of talk to you about what's changed. If you recall back from January, it was really just a sidewalk project. And so curbs were kind of staying where they were. Well, now it's going to be a full rebuild. So there's an opportunity there to really get your ultimate cross section there. So I'm going to talk to you and again, the MDC board a little bit about that project and give you an update on that next Tuesday at 4:30. Flipping to page 3, just wanted some breaking news. Under 2015 construction, ACHD community programs projects, the Meridian James Court pedestrian signal is on ACHD's commission agenda for tomorrow to approve the bids on that project. It's actually coupled with another project in Boise But if approved tomorrow, construction for that pedestrian signal on Meridian Road at James Court should happen in July and be done by late August.
Fantastic.
So just to let you know, that Bud Porter pathway,
Awesome.
that connection will be made here soon. Staying on that same page 3, the Meridian Road interchange, I'm not going to read the update necessarily. There's some change orders floating around. But I did want to let you know that the Meridian Interchange Task Force is going to be meeting next month. And if it's okay with Councilman Roundtree, I think maybe it'd be good because I'm organizing ITD and their contractors to come and give an update on the construction of that project to the Interchange Task Force. And so what I would do is maybe extend that invite to all of council. If you want to come to that meeting in July, I'll go ahead and just copy you all on that meeting too. So if you're curious about what the status is of that project, you can come to that meeting. So.
In lieu of that as well, if council cannot participate, if they could give some kind of a summary, that would be really nice.
Can do.
Madam Mayor?
Mr. Zaramba.
Not to put a burden on ITD greater than what they already have, but during the split corridor project, ACHD was very generous in having monthly meetings with the contractors, not only inviting council, but inviting the general public. Is there any chance that one of these information meetings could be open to the public?
They can attend the Transportation Commission meeting.
Yeah, we will provide an update there in that venue at the Transportation Commission. It won't probably be at the same level of the Interchange Task Force, but I don't think they have that resource budgeted for at the state level. I know there's weekly meetings on Thursdays out on site, but those are for contractors in the city and whatnot, so they're not really geared towards the public. And quite honestly, I haven't, the state has done a pretty good job with the website and providing pretty frequent updates there for people that are curious of what's the status of the project. You heard from Casey, there's a lot of folks that get their information that way. I don't know what kind of hits they're getting or what kind of numbers they're getting on that, but they do keep the website and information, do informational videos. Here's the status this week. Here's, lane closures, changes, that type of stuff. So they're kind of providing that update, just not in your traditional face-to-face
Caleb, they
format.
sent out a monthly flyer as
Yeah,
well,
and flyers.
a status report.
Right.
Yeah, perhaps that can be shared on the Meridian Interchange Rebuild Facebook page as well.
And I do update that page
Okay.
when I'm an administrator of that, when I get those updates that are pertinent to Meridian Road and even Eagle Road. A lot of times I'll update those, just share those to that page. So,
Caleb,
although I didn't get the
maybe-
training from Casey, so.
Yeah. Why do you need it? Maybe you can also work with Casey in getting information out prior to the Transportation Commission to invite the public to come and listen in, as that will be an update.
Then on the bottom of the page, and one of the main reasons for this being an agenda item today is the Chinden Boulevard Corridor Study. As we mentioned last week, on June 25th at 10 a.m. at the Ambrose School, ITD has a special invitation to meet with you and I think some other elected officials, and I've also extended that invite to the Meridian Transportation Commission at their last meeting to come to that as well and talk about the US 2026 corridor study. As was mentioned, the state's been looking at this in conjunction with Compass and some other partners for about 10 years now, since 2005. And the scope of the corridor is Aviation Way and Caldwell to Eagle Road in Boise. Right now, and probably even in the next draft of the study, there's really 3 segments of that. The first one starting at the western terminus in Caldwell goes to, is it McDermott? Let me see, where's my note on that? Midland. So from Aviation to Midland is the first section. With the 2012 concept plan, there were slip ramps and frontage roads and overpasses kind of planned for that. it's taken long enough where FHWA kind of questioned some of that design if it was really needed, and so they encouraged, I guess, ITD to reevaluate that, which included looking at new demographic numbers. CIM 2040 was adopted, and so basically they had to start a lot of this over from scratch. The draft concept plan that's going to be out for review now includes a 6-lane US 2026 all the way from Eagle Road to Caldwell. So no more slip ramps, and basically all of that corridor will look the same, 6-lane divided highway. Couple of things that I wanted to point out to you is the Linder-Chinden intersection. I think we've talked about, I know at least some of you are familiar with a continuous flow intersection. But right now that concept plan, the study shows a continuous flow intersection at Linder, a full CFI, because some of the new demographics that were received from the Compass modeling and the new transportation numbers show that, the north-south is almost as heavy as the east-west with the Linder and the river crossing there. So ITD and parametrics really struggled with how do we design something then at this intersection. So they've got a full CFI there. I think if it's okay, I've got a quick video, and this one's been played, and some of you may have even seen this before, but Utah has some of these. So I just wanted to kind of give you a quick, it's 2-minute video of just how you drive a CFI. This isn't, again, we're in Utah here, but I think this may help some of you that don't know what a CFI is. So I'm just going to play this video real quick, and it kind of walks you through as a motorist what it means to go through a CFI.
In order to improve traffic flow and relieve congestion along 3500 South and Bangerter Highway in West Valley City, UDOT is introducing a new intersection concept called a continuous flow intersection. Making a left turn at the new continuous flow intersection at Bangerter and 35th South is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Let's take a quick look. Step 1. Cars turning left start by lining up in the left turn lane just like normal intersections, only a little further back. Step 2. When the left turn signal turns green, you'll drive across the oncoming lanes into an all-new lane on the far left side of the road. Step 3. Another left turn signal will then tell you when you can go ahead and make your left turn. It's that simple.
It works.
Right turns through the continuous flow intersection are really easy. Just be sure to yield to traffic, cyclists, and pedestrians. Make your turn, then merge with traffic, and keep right on going. Making a left turn from 35th South onto Bangerter is the same as in a normal intersection. The only difference is that you need to watch for another light just past the intersection on Bangerter. If you're the last car or two making this left turn, you might see a red light here. This is the light that allows left-turning cars to cross safely in front of you. To go straight through the continuous flow intersection, you just drive as you normally would through a regular intersection. The only difference is that you need to watch for another light just past the intersection on Bangerter. If you're the last car or two coming through, you might see a red light here. This is the light that allows left-turning cars to cross safely in front of you.
So some of the rationale, I know it's a little bit weird to turn before you turn, but the main reason for this design is you can turn your lefts at the same time you allow your through movement. So you really cut out a phase of your signal so you can allow more green time. So this type of an intersection, so the full CFI will be, you'll do that both on the Chinden legs and the Linder legs. So you'll have that same thing. It's not the other cross street in that video. What I will point out is at Locust Grove and at Meridian, though, they are proposing partial CFIs. So the Chinden legs would still do this, and then the other legs would just be a more traditional north-south conventional intersection that way. So anyways, I just wanted to point that out to you. It really, I don't know what kind of exhibits ITD is going to have there, but the line work I've seen on some of the aerials, it's makes your head spin when you try to figure it out where the lines go and you're trying to stop and what signal, is this signal directing traffic that way or this way? And, it's about this big, and so you're trying to, envision driving through there. So I'm just trying to help a little bit as you look at some of these 2D printouts that are going to be probably on a table of what that really looks like, and if you have any questions or comments on that, so you're a little bit oriented for that. So.
No, so is that meeting, Caleb, open to the public, or is that just for?
So, Madam Mayor, there is another meeting that night that is the public open house. This one is more for elected officials and city staff. If someone from the public came, in fact, I invited David Turnbull to this one, but it really isn't a public meeting. I mean, again, I don't think they're going to turn anyone away, but the public is encouraged to come later that night. And I think they'll probably be fully staffed and, be ready for, cookies and drinks and that type of a thing in the evening. So, it's really geared more for the one-on-one conversations. They want to hear from you directly. What are your thoughts on the right-of-way widths? And that'll probably be a pretty big shock when you see those two. It's a pretty wide corridor, let alone at the intersections. I mean, this design at the Catholic Church, I think, gets to about 12 feet to their building, and they got some nice lush landscaping out there, but the footprint for this thing is huge. So anyways, just kind of wanted to give you a little bit of background on that.
So if we want cookies, we have to go.
You have to go twice. Yeah. So I don't know, we talked, and I don't know if Councilman Roundtree wants to refresh some of his comments from last week or not, or if we need to. There's not really a strategy, I don't think, but as was pointed out, this is really the getting the environmental complete so they can move towards corridor preservation and ultimately constructing and improving the corridor. But this is the first step, and it's taken forever to get this far. So.
Now, Caleb, I know the city's been trying to get right away as part of the development entitlements. Has the right-of-way changed?
Madam Mayor, kind of. So we have, ITD's changed their policy a little bit. Back in the day, they were, some folks over there, when Sue was there, she would kind of give us, here's what we need, 100 feet from center line. Without having the study adopted yet, there's really not a true number that they'll give us. So it hasn't really changed. It's just that there's nothing official, and there's some changes being made too that from headquarters is allowing the districts a little more authority to determine their right-of-way needs, where before it was more structured on classification of the roadway and not arterials, but just your class 3 and 4 highways, and them all being rural, and it's kind of an outdated classification system. So ITD is kind of getting away from that, and again pushing it more to the district level where there's these specific plans. For most of Meridian, again, the right-of-way impacts are real similar to what we reviewed back in 2011, 2012. Most of the changes are in Canyon County as far as right-of-way impacts. So we've been doing a pretty good job of preserving the right-of-way.
Good. And Councilman Roundtree, you have anything to add?
Well, with respect to your question, the original right-of-way width that we were holding back is probably not what they would prefer, but I think they can probably build the 6 lanes in it. They can't build these intersections with the accommodations we made with the setbacks. They're just going to be some expensive real estate they're going to have to buy to do it. The only other option is to put full interchanges in, which is going to be a footprint that's even bigger than these continuous flow intersections, and they probably drive a lot better, and they're certainly more understandable to the average driver. And this is a rather unique concept for the driving skill of the community that's going to be using this, at least to the west. So if it ever happens, it's going to be interesting. I think it's going to be a real study in public involvement in dealing with public reaction at these meetings when the public sees this and walks out scratching their head saying it's never going to work.
it does work, and it works pretty slick, but it's not intuitive to the average driver.
They can drive on State Street.
Well, they're going to do something similar to this at State and Veterans Parkway,
Veteran Park, okay.
except you go way through the intersection, come back to make the left turn. But
Any other
I would encourage
questions?
everybody to go if you have an opportunity just to see this. It's I was totally uninformed when I saw these layouts here about 3 weeks ago. That I had no idea that they had gotten to this point, and they've done a lot of work, and it's going to be extremely expensive if it ever comes to fruition.
Well, we hope it does.
Yeah. Well, there's no money for any of this, unfortunately.
Just to wrap up then, if anyone wants to talk about that project between now and that open house, feel free to call me or email or whatever you're comfortable with there. Just to wrap up the memo, just a couple of other things. On page 6, the downtown placemaking, just again to highlight that for you all. That'll be also on your joint meeting with MDC next Tuesday to discuss the lighter, quicker, cheaper report that was recently completed from a 2-day workshop that was done here at City Hall in downtown on March 19th and 20th from Idaho Smart Growth and Project for Public Spaces. So some of you have already seen that report in other venues, but we're gonna talk about that with MDC, and I'll give just a overview of that and talk about what projects in that report maybe we should pursue as a community. So, and who should lead those. And then the rest of the memo is just a letter and a response to our prioritized list of projects for this fiscal year and where they stand in ACHD's integrated 5-year work plan. So once I hear more on that, I'll provide that update, but they're in the process of coming up with an initial draft, and again, I'll share updates on that as applicable and when I get them. So I don't know if there's any other questions on anything that maybe I didn't touch on in the memo or anything else. I would stand for those now, but with that, I'm done. So thank you.
Thank you, Caleb. Mr. Zaremba.
Madam Mayor, you touched on it, but are you saying that our meeting with MDC is now settled on the 16th? And if so, what time?
Yes.
Or is it within our regular council meeting?
Sorry, Madam Mayor, Councilman Zaremba. It is next Tuesday at 4:30 here. So
Okay. Thank you.
I didn't realize that was, you guys are hearing for the first time, so I apologize about that, but that was one of the options.
People may know, I haven't been checking
Okay.
my email.
Okay.
Yeah, we sent it out.
I got it, thank you.
Okay.
Does ACHD have any comment? No. Okay. Okay, item 8F is under legal and fire departments.
Madam Mayor, members of council, I'll start this one and then team with Mr. Neri on any legal issues that come up. I'll try and keep this brief while doing no injustice to the details. The first agreement before you is an agreement update MOU with the Meridian Rural Fire Protection District. The last signed agreement we had in place was in 2009. During that time, the cost share allocation was 80-20, 20% paid by the district and 80% paid by the city for the operation of the fire department. About that same time, the revenues for the district started to decrease. As they tried to keep up with that percentage, they dipped into what we would call a fund balance. They call a reserve account. That reserve account got down to near zero levels, so they had to start decreasing even further the cost share allocation to the city. This created a lot of confusion for finance because the processes we both have in place for the district and the city are at different times. In other words, Stacy would try and determine on the front end of our budgeting process in the city what that cost share was going to be. The district wouldn't set their cost share until the end of that process, and so that created more confusion as well. What we've tried to do with this update, working with finance, legal, and the district over the last 4 months, is to bring an updated MOU that creates a little bit more predictability and a little less confusion. So I would turn your attention to page 2 And beginning with number 4, and I'll work my way back up, the cost share allocation for the FY16 budget will be 13%. That is all based on the first part of section 3 and 4 above, the gross market valuation percentage, the population percentage, and the market valuation. That final percentage was calculated by our city finance department. It was sent to the rural district for their review. They agreed with the calculation based on that, that percentage allocation. They also looked at where their revenues are currently and what they're anticipated to be in 2016. And for this FY16 budget year, can add 2% to that valuation, to that percentage, to help pay for the cost of personnel and operating expenses for the fire department. Moving upwards up into section 2, the funding is also there. They have been able to rebuild to a certain extent their fund balance, for lack of a better word again. They want to continue to provide assistance with the build out of future stations, future fire apparatus for those new stations, and even up to and including covering part of the personnel costs for those new fire stations when they first open. I'd take you back to Station 5. They built Station 5, and they also paid the first 6 months of the personnel costs for that station to help with the budgeting process of the city. They would like to continue to do that. To be able to do that, they need to have that fund balance or that savings within their budget. Item C within Section 2 is in order to meet their desire to help continue to fund future fire stations, build them out, and even help with personnel costs, they cannot also help to purchase replacement capital as the city moves forward. So replacements of fire trucks that are currently within our system. To give you an idea on call volume, that's not pertained within the percentage, but out of the 5,200 calls we had last year, about 420 of those were in the district. So about 10% of our call volume is within the district. As far as that capital replacement, they would rather help contribute to the build out of new stations and have the money to do that as opposed to participating in the capital replacement of fire engines. So that is the overview of the agreement. I guess I would turn to Mr. Neri. He's been working with their attorney, John Fitzgerald, on any of the legal issues involved.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, probably the only significant legal issue in these agreements is that we wanted to make sure we identified clearly the numbers of prior agreements and what this is replacing, because that was the intent, was to create a new working agreement moving forward, and we wanted to make sure it was clear on the record because we've had so many different agreements for varieties of things with the district that what was this replacing, and it really is just simply replacing the operations and maintenance agreements that we've already had. So not a huge change. Obviously the numbers are the significant change. Otherwise, the language and the wording is pretty consistent. Mr. Fitzgerald's been their attorney for a long time, so it's pretty consistent with the prior agreements. I would agree with the chief and maybe add one thing on the capital replacement. That's also something our finance has also been very supportive of. It can be very dicey to try to get a portionate share of a fire engine or equipment, and so from going forward, that's been finance's recommendation as well, is that we create a clearer division line between equipment versus personnel versus the hard cost of facilities and the physical plant. So I think this meets all of what the city's needs are, and I know the district is on board with it as well, so it's ready to move forward if you're willing to do that.
Bill, any questions from council?
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Borden.
Just one. I'd ask the chief about it, and I'll direct it to Bill. Just to be clear on 2B, but notwithstanding any term, 2B, the funding by the district of the capital outlay expenditure budget, that sentence ends with, shall be for the costs and expenses of fire department equipment outside the city limits of the city. Does that mean it's equipment that is literally physically outside of the city limits, or is it equipment that is inside city limits but can be used outside? I don't know what the phrase outside the city limits of the city means in that context.
Councilman Borden, again, the intent of that language, I know it's confusing language, the intent of that was to ensure that it was clear, kind of tongue-in-cheek there, that as the district, as the city has needs outside of the city limits for future fire stations, the district has an intent and a desire to help contribute to the funding of those capital expenditures. So, for example, Station 6, they bought the land for Station 6 already. That's our next planned station. Currently, that's outside the city limits. Obviously, it will be annexed. But they wanted to make sure that there was language in there that specifically stated their intent to want to help with capital purchases in the future outside the current city limits as the department needs to grow. I know the wording is clear as
Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, members of council, Councilmember Borton, and probably if you would like, I mean, the only additional language that might make it clearer would be something to the effect of if any or if applicable, because there may not be, what I anticipated, and I didn't discuss it in detail with Mr. Fitzgerald, but if there was a need at some particular point in time for the rural to construct a station that would be solely outside the city, say the further south of our area of city impact, but still within the district, and we're not necessarily contiguous to it yet, but yet there's a need, depending on growth. So it might solely be outside of the city limits at that particular point in time. I think that's what this was intended for, is to allow for that if and when it's applicable. I think, again, if it's within the city, the preference is that they contribute to certain types of costs, but not to necessarily some specific costs like equipment. But that's what I thought it was intended for. If you think clarity would help to add additional language, I certainly don't think they'd have any objection to that. So,
Bill, I have a question. Based on your explanation and the chief's explanation, does your explanation fall under the definition of equipment? I have a hard time believing a fire station is equipment.
Madam Member,
And I could make that argument that, no, it's not equipment.
Well,
shouldn't it be like a capital expenditure or a infrastructure and equipment, or
I would agree.
expand that definition?
Yeah, it may be, Councilman Roundtree, I mean, I agree with you, because, I mean, in one portion where capital outlay expenditure could be a very large or encompassing term versus the second half, which is talking about specifically equipment. Again, Chief may know, but I don't know that they would have any objection to anything clarifying, because I think it really is a if and when and if applicable type of circumstance. I don't think the intention is for that to be significant, at least in the immediate future.
Agree completely. It's a good cleanup.
Good catch.
If that's their intent, that it would be nice to have it there. If they're understanding it, that it's just a truck or a pump or a hose or whatever, then it's kind of different.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, that Councilman Roundtree's point applies also in paragraph, or subsection C.
Yep.
That fire department equipment phrase is used again. It might create some of that same ambiguity.
Madam Mayor, members of council, we can clarify that with the district. I think they have a meeting this week.
Yeah, Thursday. It got moved from Monday.
So
to
I will
Thursday.
get a hold of Mr. Fitzgerald in the morning, and I don't anticipate a problem. If there is, but we'll put it back on for next week in anticipation of it getting resolved. So.
Okay. We have item F1 that was amended onto the agenda.
Madam Mayor, members of council, the second agreement before you is an interagency joint powers agreement for maintenance and repair of our apparatus. The history on this is when I came in as a deputy chief in 2007, the department used City of Boise primarily as some of their repair and maintenance work for apparatus. Chief Anderson made a switch on that. As they grew, we kind of went to the back of the line, and so it'd be days with our apparatus sitting there not being able to get work done. And so we started working with Dusty Ballantyne. He is with Hughes Fire Equipment out of Oregon. Hughes is a offset of Pierce Manufacturing, which is what all of our apparatus are. Dusty from Hughes moved into the Idaho area, specifically in Meridian, lives off of Locust Grove, and started working out of a trailer, doing maintenance and repair on fire department apparatus. The thing with Dusty that the Chief Anderson and I would agree looked at is he is a certified EVT, which is an emergency vehicle technician. They train specifically on fire department apparatus. He went through his training and certification programs at Pierce and was certified at Pierce. So we found that very beneficial. He's done a great job for us. The challenge when he was with Hughes is that he covered not only Idaho, but 3 other states, Eastern Oregon, Utah, and Montana. So while we didn't have significant delays in getting our apparatus worked on, we had some delays, up to 3 to 4 days here and there as he was traveling throughout those states. About 2.5, 3 months ago, the Star Fire Department hired Dusty to be their mechanic. They did quite an extensive study, an analysis. They contacted the fire departments in the area that used Dusty and said, are you happy with his service, and would you continue to use his service if the prices stayed the same? We looked at the prices and compared those with Hughes. They are the exact same. The benefit to us is that Dusty is now here full-time in the Treasure Valley, not traveling, so the reliability of having him available has increased. We did look around. There still are no other emergency vehicle technicians in the valley outside of the city of Boise, and we know what the service level would be there if we sent our apparatus to Boise. We feel this meets our needs. We would like to continue our relationship with Dusty. He's done a great job for us. We have not had any callbacks on the repair work he has done, and he knows Pierce engines, which is what our fleet is. So that is an overview of the agreement. A last section within that that was developed and language created by the 2 legal folks, this time Mr. Neri and Bill Gigray, is we were going to be paying for annual pump testing. Dusty was going to be doing that for us as well. They have a need to use our pit from time to time, our water pit at Station 1 behind the tower where they can flow pumps. And so for exchange in them being able to use our pit, they will be doing all of our pump testing on an annual basis for nothing. And so we felt that was a very good exchange of services. So that's an overview of the agreement. I think it's a good one, and it continues to get the work done in the manner that we'd like to see it done.
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Zaremba.
My only question would be, has it been passed by Keith Watts and gotten his blessing?
It has. I took it one step higher than Keith. I took it right to Stacy, and she had a big smile on her face and said, thank you for getting an agreement in place. With Hughes, we never had an agreement. It was just they were the service provider, and that's who we used. So she is very pleased that we have an agreement now in place tied to the bills that we're receiving for payment.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, in addition to that, some of the things the finance department raised, both purchasing and from the finance director, were a lot of questions on the coverage and how can STAR stand behind this, and we've ironed all of that issues out. They have the appropriate insurance and coverages in place. You know, we're very comfortable with another governmental entity as the essentially the service provider with the individual. We think it really does make sense, and we would like to get it in place because the work has continued to be performed, and this is the mechanism in which the finance department is more comfortable in making payments. So,
Bill, I don't want to delay us, but if I could add one more thing. There is out clauses as well. We are not bound to utilizing Dusty if we become dissatisfied with his service or if another provider comes in. This doesn't bind us to Starfire for service.
Okay, any further questions?
Madam Mayor?
Mr. Borden.
Does this come back for approval with a resolution, or?
No,
Can we
this is
act
a-
on it
this
now?
is a contract.
Oh.
yeah, you can approve it today.
All right, Madam Mayor,
Mr. Borden.
if there's no further discussion, I move we approve item 8F1, the interagency joint powers agreement for apparatus maintenance and repair services with Star Fire Department.
I have a motion and a second to approve item 8F1. Madam Clerk, will you call roll?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Cavanagh.
Aye.
Councilmember Mylum.
Aye.
Councilmember Byrd.
Aye.
Councilmember Roundtree.
Aye.
Councilmember Borton.
Aye.
Councilmember Zaremba.
Aye.
All ayes, motion carried. Item 8G is under our Police Department, Police and Public Works. But I'll turn this over to Chief Levy.
Madam Mayor, Council, thank you. I'll be presenting this for both departments. Animal control functions for the City of Meridian have been contracted with the iHumane Society. The building that housed that function was paid for by the general fund. However, as part of the wastewater treatment plant expansion, the enterprise fund is now using that building. Since these are two funds with different funds, the asset must be transferred to the enterprise fund. The enterprise fund, in return, needs to reimburse the general fund for the net book value of the building since October 1st, 2014. That current value is $36,745. That is based upon finance and net gains and depreciation and a whole bunch of other areas I don't quite understand. In turn, I would like to request that the city forward these funds to the Idaho Humane Society Building Fund to further their attempts to expand their facility in recognition that they added, by adding Meridian to their service area, has increased their facility needs. I would like to point out that the sooner the new facility is built, the greater the benefit is to our citizens due to the proximity of the location to the city. Because of this agreement, we wanted a simple legal agreement. Nothing is ever simple when you have attorneys involved, but we do have a agreement that has been worked out. Idaho Humane Society does not know that we were doing this, and so Dr. Rosenthal's signature needs to be on there, so I asked Emily to contact Dr. Rosenthal for a signature, so they'll soon know this. If the city's in agreement with that, I would like to formally request that the two budget amendments be approved and that the legal agreement be signed next week. And I stand for any questions.
Thank you, Chief.
Madam Mayor, one more thing. I don't believe I said the amount. And that is $36,745 based upon the current assessment.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Mr. Neri.
Madam Mayor, for members of the council, for the record, so all we've done is created an addendum to the existing agreement. So it's about as simple as we can do. So it's a one-page agreement. We will contact the Humane Society and hopefully have it on next week for the approval of that agreement. But if you would approve the budget amendment tonight, I think finance would appreciate that. They've reviewed it. Chief Levy's reviewed this addendum, and so unless there's a concern from the Humane Society, I don't see any problem with having it on next week for you.
I doubt there will be a concern from IHS. Any comments, questions?
Madam Mayor. Jeff, recognize I'm putting you on the spot. How much, what's the annual contracted amount from the city to the Humane Society for services?
Madam Mayor, Councilman Kavner, I cannot tell you the exact amount, but I can tell you it's over 300 and under 350, if that's good enough for you.
320 or something like that.
Madam Mayor Follett? Again, Chief, I know I'm putting you on the spot. Do you have a total amount that the Humane Society is trying to raise for their capital campaign?
Madam Mayor, Councilman Kavner, I do not. Okay. I do not know what total amount they're trying to raise, nor do I know how much they need to break ground. The mayor might have a better idea of that.
A lot. I do know that the city of Boise has donated or contributed $500,000 to the shelter.
Question then. Where's the shelter located? Or where's the proposed site? Is it what on
It's on
Franklin?
Overland and
Right next to Walmart.
Cole. Yeah.
Just west of Walmart on Overland.
So it is a considerable benefit to our citizens to get to the new shelter location. The IHS came and met with Lieutenant Coliani and myself, and they did make the ask if there was something. I contacted Public Works to see if that asset had been transferred, and we found out that it hadn't. They got the information to the chief and really thought that we donated the inside to the rescue group that continue to operate in the city. And because at one time we did talk about the shelter and this is much cheaper than building one ourselves. This seemed appropriate to put that asset back to, and there, it's been depreciated, and that's why it's not the 100,000 that was initially invested. It's been depreciated, and this is the amount that it was valued at.
So that's how much we pay. That much minus that.
Questions? Ms. Mylum.
Seeing none, I move that we approve the budget amendment for police and public works departments for payment and reimbursement of the animal control building for the not-to-exceed amount of $36,745.
Second?
I have a motion and a second with a note that this will be on next week's agendas with the agreement. Any discussion? Mr. Zaremba.
Just a question of whether or not that really was a two-part request. We have a transfer between the two funds, and then there was an additional request that after that transfer, the general fund send the money to the Humane Society. So is it, are we doing both of those parts?
I think that's next week. I believe this motion was just to transfer the money between funds, and the donation to the animal control, the facility, or the Humane Society will be on next week's agenda. Is that right?
That's correct. For the clarification.
Madam Clerk, will you call roll?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Cavanagh.
Aye.
Councilmember Mylum.
Aye.
Councilmember Byrd.
Aye.
Councilmember Roundtree.
Aye.
Councilmember Borton.
Aye.
Councilmember Zaremba.
Aye.
Carried. Item H is under our City Council liaison and committee updates. We'll start with Mr. Zaremba.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, let's see. I'm on the board of Valley Regional Transit, and I think we just had a very comprehensive update on that. I appreciate Kelly's part in that and her presentation. Liaison to the legal department, and recently we approved an amendment to make a part-time position full-time. That has already happened and is already proving to be effective and necessary, so thank you all very much for that approval. Public Works Department just had a very successful Public Works Week. Some of you participated or saw one or two of their events, but very good attendance at the ribbon cutting at the new administrative facilities and lab facilities and other service facilities at the wastewater treatment, at the water resource recovery plant is now the correct name for it. Very fine facilities that are going to be very useful as we continue to grow and continue to have greater EPA requirements. The expo here at City Hall on Wednesday was well attended. The weather turned out to be beautiful. That was great. I did not go, but I've heard a report that the bus trip the next night was very well received. Every seat full, and everybody enjoyed it. And let's see what else happened. They had a golf tournament that went very well, and they had a poop scoot, which is a run that I think it was 150, 157 people ran in that, something like that. And so all in all, it was a very successful week, and got the word out to the citizens about what goes on at Public Works, which is an awful lot of stuff all the time. And that was very good. That's it.
Thank you. Mr. Borton.
Fire's been plugging along, again, focused mostly on budget work and their progress on some master planning in a cooperative effort with CUNA and STAR and Rural Fire and the City of Meridian, which is a pretty exciting project that will be coming before us here shortly, which is a great project that they've been working on for a while. And then Historic Preservation Commission meeting this week will be tough. That's it.
Well, I'll let the mayor talk about the mayor stuff, because she knows more about what's going on there than I do on
I don't know.
her busy schedule, but you are in the throes of AIC. Caleb did mention that the interchange focus group is attempting to find a day we can meet, and I haven't heard for sure if we've settled on it, but you can tell me later, Caleb. And that's the group that got together and worked with ITD and the contractors to try to come up with some kind of a design that apparently is going some direction, but I think some of us are kind of confused to what's going on there. Hopefully we can get that squared away in the next few days. Mediation continues on the mediation effort that the mayor and I are involved in. And Bill, I'm confused as to when the next time and date is, because I didn't go out of the last one with real clarity of when it was we were going to meet and where.
It was
We'll meet after
today.
this.
It was today? So apparently I missed it. All right,
But we have another date.
all right. So I can't tell you if anything's going on there, but maybe the mayor can allude to it.
AIC is this week, so it starts tomorrow, and we have Councilman Burr, Councilman Zaremba, and Councilmember Milam that are signed up. Councilmember Zaremba's district seat is up. Is that yours or Elaine's?
Hers is up.
Hers is up. So you might give some thought about that. Dairy Days Parade is next week, and you all have accommodations, so stay tuned. Jean Kleiner Day is on Saturday, as Steve had mentioned. We hope you'll come out and enjoy the concert. I will spare you my conductor skills. They wanted me to do their last song, and I just want to enjoy it and not have to worry about how I look up there. So I'm really looking forward to celebrating this generous gift to our community, and seeing the unveiling of the next piece of art that they're generously donating as well. It's such a legacy, and every time you go out there and you see our public enjoying that park, that gift, it's just great. Memorial Day celebration was phenomenal, and we just keep creating memories out there. So I did want to note for Caleb and I met regarding Chinden and had a conversation that soon this interchange focus group might change into a Chinden focus group. So again, it proves so successful in terms of having a focused citizen group in carrying the water, helping to support staff and this council in establishing this priority. It's very needed. So kind of need a concerted effort on that. So, Mr. Byrd.
Madam Mayor, first, MDC, anybody that wants to attend one of our monthly meetings at 7:30 in the morning here, if you want to get up and come out, we'd appreciate that. The parks, you guys got a tremendous presentation. I don't know, and I think every council person on here should be very proud of our parks. I mean, They are so first class, and they are maintained so first class. And I can't praise Mike and his staff in that Parks Department more, because every time, and I go through there at least once a week through the parks, and I hate to tell you, I've never seen anything that was out of place, brown, or anything else. I'm absolutely so proud of our Parks Department, and to see what we have done because you got to realize Tolley Park did not come on until 2000. And what we have done, and these two people right here have been two of the biggest ones that made sure it happened. And you know, I can't say enough about our Parks Department and the way it's maintained. And Mike, put that onto your staff, because they just do a fantastic job. And then my other one, finances, does their great job as usual. The budget books are out, looks good. We're going to be busy here the next couple of months getting the budget squared away and tightening our belt, and hopefully giving back some more money to the taxpayers. And with that, I'll shut up.
Ms. Mylum.
I'm going to read mine. So the Clerk's Department, they are researching a new way of sending postcards to notice for land use public hearings. IT is still working on Excel reconfiguration and are ahead of schedule at this point. The staff attended a one-day Excel regional user conference in Salt Lake last week, and it was very beneficial. And they are continuing to assist with TriTech project for the Meridian PD. And that leads me into the Meridian PD. The construction on the training center is on schedule and should be opening towards the end of July. And they will have a formal grand opening sometime in August. And we just graduated another Citizen Public Safety Academy, and they're planning to do another one in the fall. Everything's going good.
A couple quick things coming out of community development. They are wrapping up the draft RFP for the Conference Center Performance Arts Space and are on task to have that out by the end of the month with responses back by the end of August. So I think I know they've had a very audacious timetable, and it's great to see them hitting their benchmarks. As Bruce mentioned last week, the New Ventures Lab is open. I think it's important, we thank a lot of the city staff that helped make that a reality, specifically a lot of folks in Public Works, Max Jensen, Eric Jensen, and a lot of work from our legal staff to make that happen. I had a chance to tour the facility, and I think it's a good thing for our community, and I think there's a lot of dividends to be paid on that project down the road. HR, reoccurring trend, I think, of what we've talked about today. Budget's on everyone's mind, and that's a department that always has a busy season. We're always bringing new people on and new people moving on to other things, and so I think we've got a great HR staff that works hard. Lastly, I really want to appreciate Councilman Borton for bringing a reminder to us Thursday HPC at 5:30. I know it's going to be a hard one for a lot of us, and I'd encourage you guys all to add that to your calendar to go and attend that. Dr. Tom's the guy that lived the Meridian way, and I'm going to miss him. That's it. That's it for me.
Yes.
Adjourn.
So moved.
I have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All ayes.